Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. This is Mornings on Sky News.
With Leah and Wilf. Good morning from me as well. Let's get to it.
Donald Trump claims the king agrees with him when it comes to Iran not having a nuclear weapon in his opening toast at the White House state dinner.
Pointed messages from the king, who calls on the US to help defend Ukraine and NATO in an historic speech to Congress.
Prime Minister gets ready to face the final PMQs before next week's local elections after seeing off a Tory effort to make him face a parliamentary inquiry over the Mandelson vetting row.
Also today, as summer approaches, will the price of jet fuel derail your holidays? We'll have the very latest for you.
And a special investigation into the Cowboy builders ripping off homeowners and avoiding time behind bars.
Hello, good morning and welcome to the programme. Now, the King has hailed the importance of the transatlantic relationship in a toast at a glittering state dinner in Washington, D.C. This was overnight with a warm and often funny speech.
But not before President Trump had revealed some of their earlier conversations, saying that King Charles agreed with him that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. Earlier in the evening, the King had made perhaps his most political remarks to date, directly calling on the US to support Ukraine and ignore what he called the clarion calls to become more inward-looking.
Yeah, we'll be live in Washington in just a moment, but first, here's our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock.
White tie at the White House, topping off a day that had so far gone so smoothly until, during the toasts, Trump says this.
And we're doing a little Middle East work right now, two of you might know, and we're doing very well. We have militarily defeated that particular opponent, and we're never going to let that opponent ever, Charles agrees with me, even more than I do, we're never going to let that opponent have a nuclear weapon.
This is exactly what the palace had feared, a president off-piste, awkwardly unfiltered, and a deeply uncomfortable moment for the king, who's supposed to sit above politics. He carried on regardless with his long-planned speech.
When my mother visited in 1957, not the least of her tasks was to help put the special back into our relationship after a crisis in the Middle East. Nearly 70 years on, it is hard to imagine anything like that happening today.
It had all seemed so diplomatic earlier. With full fanfare, a dazzling display and a star-spangled welcome, White House style. Two countries, two old allies, but a backdrop of transatlantic tension. From Donald Trump came a love letter to British royalty.
Anytime the Queen was involved in a ceremony or anything, my mother would be glued to the television and she'd say, "Look, Donald, look how beautiful that is." She really did love the family, but I also remember her saying very clearly, "Charles, look, young Charles, he's so cute." My mother. My mother had a crush on Charles. Can you believe it?
Their Majesties King Charles III and Queen Camilla.
And then to Congress and the King's address. Quite possibly, this was his most political speech ever.
In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, when NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time, and the United Nations Security Council was united in the face of terror, we answered the call together. Today, Mr. Speaker, that same unyielding resolve is needed for the defense of Ukraine and her most courageous people.
12 standing ovations, one happy king, touched, we're told, by the warmth of the response. This address was certainly the centrepiece of the state visit, the British government's message to the US. And with the King's tone and tenor, They hope his well-chosen words will mollify the hardened stance of the president. The overriding focus, historic alliances over current political conflict. At least that was the plan. These off-the-cuff comments highlighting the risk of being in the room with an unpredictable president. Laura Bundock, Sky News in Washington.
Let's bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins. David, a busy evening there for the King, of course. I guess the dinner only wrapped up in the early hours. Lots to come out of that, including some great jokes and that slightly controversial comment from the president around Iran. But really, the highlight for me was the King's speech in Congress. It was jam-packed, record number of standing ovations, as Laura said. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, say he absolutely nailed it with some quite political content at times.
Yes, that speech was supposed to last 20 minutes. It lasted 37. He had to pause so often for applause. A record 12 standing ovations. That is 9 more than his mother, Queen Elizabeth, received when she addressed Congress back in 1991. And I think it's remarkable that we saw bipartisan approval, something we've not seen during a State of the Union address for a decade, when you consider just how political the speech got at times. He didn't just remind them of their constitutional role in keeping a check on executive power. He urged members of Congress to support NATO, and in a very subtle but clear message to President Trump, he championed the cause of Ukraine. Remember, it's just 14 months since President Trump effectively threw Volodymyr Zelensky out of the White House. Now, that is soft power with a hard edge. But he got away with it because the King struck the right tone, struck the right balance, and disarmed them with his humour. He has been very funny, and the jokes continued at the state dinner. He really brought the house down, and what a house it was, filled with the leaders in technology and innovation. People like Jensen Huang, who heads up NVIDIA, a world leader in producing computer chips for use in AI. The King had met with some of these people earlier in the day. Jeff Bezos from Amazon was also there. Tim Cook from Apple. There were members of the cabinet. The British government was represented by the Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper alongside her, fresh from his Masters, his double Masters victory, the Northern Irish golfer Rory McIlroy. So I don't think that throwaway comment about Iran and the King supporting Donald Trump's position on it will overshadow the event too much, because at the end of the day, all it really reveals is that Donald Trump doesn't fully appreciate that the monarchy is non-political. But the King did take the opportunity last night to acknowledge what happened on Saturday evening when there was the attempted assassination of President Trump. He said Donald Trump and his wife Melania had epitomised the old British term, keep calm and carry on. And that's exactly what the King and Queen will do today as they head to New York for day 3 of this royal visit.
David, as ever, great stuff. Thanks so much. We're going to have more on the state visit throughout the morning. 7:30, we'll be speaking to Sir Nigel Sheinwald, the former ambassador to the US. I actually laughed out loud at a couple of moments. It was, stand-up comedy in front of a joint session of Congress from the King. It's unbelievable.
It was quite remarkable, historic too. He managed to weave from Oscar Wilde to Charles Dickens, even dropping the Magna Carta, and doing it with such warmth was quite incredible.
Yeah, and as David said there, 37 minutes, not 20, and fantastic stuff. We'll discuss it, as we said,
Yes.
Sir Nigel at 7:30 and our own Alistair Bruce at 9:30, so stay tuned for all of that.
Now, the Prime Minister has avoided a parliamentary investigation into whether he misled MPs. This is over the appointment of Peter Mandelson as US ambassador, but his troubles are far from over.
This afternoon, he'll have to face MPs at what will no doubt be a fiery PMQs, the last one, in fact, before next week's local elections, which are shaping up to be pretty divisive. Our political correspondent, Alex Rogers, is in Downing Street for us this morning, as she was yesterday morning. Alex, certainly not a long-term all clear, but perhaps a mini sigh of relief compared to the tension and the apprehension that was in the air in Downing Street this time yesterday.
Yes, the Prime Minister won that vote not to be referred to the Privileges Committee pretty decisively with a majority of 112, which you would expect because of the number of Labour MPs on the backbenches, and also that he'd managed to convince his MPs that this was just a political stunt by the Tories just a week before the local elections. But I think you're right, Wilf, there's still a lot of unhappiness simmering. There were people I was speaking to yesterday that were really unhappy that they were being whipped against this motion, saying it would essentially give the message to voters that they were complicit in a cover-up. And I think he may have passed this test, but the idea that he's completely out of danger is probably not correct, and that his authority is still being tested very much by his MPs and very much going to happen at the local elections just next week.
Do we know what happens now to the 15 MPs that voted against the government? I mean, there's also 53 Labour MPs who abstained, but I guess the focus will initially be on the 15 who directly voted against the government.
There's questions about that, Wilf. I mean, traditionally, if you vote against the government on a three-line whip, you do have the whip suspended. But whether the Prime Minister has the authority to do that, that's what's in question at the moment. He may not want to irk his backbenchers after he's just put them through a pretty unedifying spectacle in the House of Commons.
Alex, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much. By the way, 8:15 this morning, we'll be speaking to the First Minister of Scotland, John Swinney, and of course we'll be speaking to the government. Steve Reid joins us coming up in the next 5 minutes.
Now, tens of thousands of homeowners are being ripped off by so-called cowboy builders. This is every year, but a Sky News investigation has found that only a handful of them actually get prosecuted.
It seems to be a bit of a postcode lottery when it comes to putting rogue tradespeople behind bars, with some parts of the country simply too understaffed to investigate complaints.
Well, people are being left out of pocket and in some cases without a proper home. Amelia Harper has the story.
Here's the kitchen, which is more or less functional at the moment, if you include the wires that are gaffer taped to the ceiling. But
Karen and her son Francis don't own a home. They own a building site. They wanted a loft conversion in 2022, but instead their builder left them with this.
Probably the best part of a year I slept in the garage, just on the floor, sort of, because that at least had a roof. They'd cut through some of the structure of it so that the roof was basically spreading the walls of the house open.
And this was how their nightmare unfolded. Inside the front room of the house, their vaulted ceiling was a mess. Structurally, it wasn't fixed properly, so the weight of the roof wasn't supported. The scale of the build clear from underneath. These videos recorded by Francis document the works as they started to go wrong. Their vaulted ceiling wasn't even level, and the steelwork failed to meet building regulations. A chartered surveyor assessed it would need to be totally rebuilt at an additional cost of £110,000. They say they'd already paid about £90,000.
That's probably gone into kind of probably not quite a breakdown, but possibly very, very close to breakdown.
We approached hundreds of councils for information, and we found that nearly 40,000 homeowners complained to their local authority about building works gone wrong in the last year.
And this was what shocked us. Half of those complaints involve suspected criminality, with homeowners falling victim to suspected building scams or so-called cowboy builders. And despite over 17,500 complaints like this, only 43 cowboy builders in England, Scotland and Wales were successfully prosecuted. We're on our way to meet a man called Steve, who hired a building company to completely redo his home in 2022, except that what happened next left him without a home completely.
Steve's builder was paid to demolish his home and entirely rebuild its foundations and structure. But 4 years later, this is what remains.
The project cost around £170,000 and I paid that up front.
So you paid your builder £170,000 up front and you were expecting the entire structure of your house to be done?
Yep. I chased the builder through telephone, text message, email, Eventually, he was then claiming financial difficulty, and then after some time, he stopped talking completely.
We still had unanswered questions. Where does accountability lie? It was time to approach Steve's builder, Nick Keeley.
Nick Keeley, Sky News. Why did you fail to finish Steve's house? Why did you fail to finish Steve's house? What have you done with the £170,000 he paid you? Why did you repeatedly assure him you would return? Do you have anything at all to say? Are you a cowboy builder? Clearly had absolutely nothing to say.
We also contacted Karen and Francis's builder, but we didn't get a reply. And we found that tens of thousands of others have experienced what they did, facing a system that fails to prevent cowboys and fails to prosecute too.
Amelia's here to talk a bit more about this. You know, we had work done in 2021. The biggest fear is whether the work will be good enough, how much you're paying, and then what actually happens to the company once they leave. Because the company we had, won't mention any names, folded after the work was done, and we still had issues with the house.
Yeah, look, this has taken months, and I have spoken to so many homeowners during the process of this investigation. And you're right, I can't tell you how many of them are just at their lowest ebb, because this is your home, and when things go wrong on your home, it impacts not just where you live, but your mental health as well. You know, we heard there from Karen saying that she was basically quite close to a breakdown because this is how much her situation actually broke her. But you're right, I think the question is about how do we enforce this? Because during this investigation, we didn't have quite time to put this in the piece, but on the full documentary that you can watch on YouTube, we look at every area across Great Britain, and we've mapped out what we found is a complete postcode lottery on enforcement. So the bodies that actually investigate building crime are trading standards run by local authorities. And we found that in some areas, they had less than one full-time equivalent staff member who was there to investigate building crime. And crucially, they don't just enforce building crime legislation. They look at 300 separate pieces of legislation on top of that. So, you know, one area that we looked at was literally Shropshire and Herefordshire. There is a border there. But the difference between the two, you could live on one side of the street and have no resource, and then the other side of the street, you could have loads of resource. So there was 0.6 full-time equivalent trading standards officers on the Shropshire side, and then on Herefordshire, it was 4.4, 7 times bigger. So it can literally be as close as that.
Amelia, great stuff. Thanks so much. By the way, do get in touch with us if you've got similar stories of your own to share. Email us mornings@sky.uk. Later this morning as well, we'll be talking to the broadcaster and consumer champion Dom Littlewood at 9, just before 9, 8:45.
Yeah. Meanwhile, a new report has found that more than 2/3 of toddlers under the age of 2 are using screens, and some for up to 8 hours a day.
A worrying figure, of course, comes just weeks after the government advised parents that kids that age shouldn't be using screens at all. Well, Graham's here with a bit more detail on, as Leah says, some pretty striking statistics there.
Yeah, absolutely, and timely as well, because as you said, it comes just weeks after this new government advice. And it essentially reached the same conclusions, and it advises the same action. Children under 2 shouldn't really be using screens at all. Now, the key word there is should, because at the moment, that's not what is happening, according to this report, at least. And it was done by the 1001 Critical Days Foundation. That was set up by the former Health Minister, Dame Andrea Leadsom. Researchers found 70% of children under 2 were using screens. It found that nearly 1/3 of newborns were watching them for more than 3 hours a day, and some, a meaningful minority, they said, were using them for up to 8 hours a day. 1 in 10 babies regularly falling asleep with a screen in front of them. Now, this is a concern, as current evidence suggests potentially higher use of screens is linked to a higher risk of obesity, short-sightedness, behavioural difficulties, problems making friends in the future as well. Will Quince, he's another former health minister. He's the chief executive of that group. He says that actually this isn't a parent problem. The issue lies with the reality gap between government guidance and the reality of life, that tech companies often are misleading in the way they issue their own age guidance, and that's something there needs to change. The report also looked into why children were on screens, often for entertainment, for education, to communicate with their friends, but it also looked into why parents and carers allowed their kids to use screens. And so one of the parents apparently responded to the researchers that it was like a survival skill in their house. They were using it to create time for themselves to do chores, for other caregiving responsibilities. But if the government guidance says essentially no use for screens under 2 years old, and the report says there's quite a lot, well, there is clearly something not going quite right.
Okay. Great stuff. Thanks so much. Right, time to speak to the government. Delighted to say we're joined now by the Housing Secretary, Steve Reid. A very good morning to you, Minister. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
How bruised is the Prime Minister by the scale of rebellion in the vote yesterday?
Well, I saw that the other way around, actually. I thought it was really encouraging that we had the vast majority of Labour MPs voting with the government, backing the Prime Minister. It was the same at the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting the night before as well, a real sense of unity there and a determination. You know, the Tories called this vote really for party political reasons. It's right there should be scrutiny over this issue. We're getting that through the publication of papers and documents and the humble address and the Foreign Affairs Select Committee carrying out their work. But voters want us to focus on the issues that matter most to them. And I've knocked on dozens, hundreds of doors over recent weeks because of the elections coming. It's really about the cost of living that people want us to talk about, and that's what we'll do.
Which we'll come to, but on the sort of scale of rebellion or not, I mean, this was as whipped a vote as you could get. 15 MPs, if your MPs voted against it, 53 abstained. What happens to those 15 now? Do they all lose the whip?
Well, you say 53 abstained. Some of those were ministers who were not in Parliament.
Fine.
So they couldn't vote because they were doing...
Three-line whip,
they were
15 of your MPs voted against it. That's not insignificant.
Well, that's out of over 400. You know, there's a handful of the usual suspects. To be honest, Wilf, I'm not that bothered about them. I'm much more bothered about the 99% of us who voted together to back the Prime Minister so that this government can focus on the things that matter most to voters. When I'm speaking to people on their doorsteps at the elections, they tell me they want us to focus on the cost of living, on house building, on the state of their streets and high streets. This issue really doesn't come up very much from voters. It's quite right there should be transparency on it, but voters want us to focus on their issues.
So you're not bothered about those Labour MPs. One of them, Emma Lewell, said, the fact that MPs like me are being whipped into voting against this motion has played into the terrible narrative that there's something to hide and good, decent colleagues will be accused of being complicit in a cover-up. The way this vote's been handled by the government smacks once again of being out of touch and disconnected from the public.
As I said,
what do you say to that?
The vast majority of us voted together. You've got a handful of usual suspects that will repeatedly vote against the government. They're not going to distract us. You know, we've got the renters' rights reforms coming in this Friday, which gives renters, people who rent their home, the biggest increase in protections and rights that we've had for a generation. That is what voters want us to focus on, not a handful of people that go off and, you know, don't play the team game with the rest of us. 99% of us are united with the Prime Minister so that we can focus on the issues that matter to us.
I want to talk about the renters' rights bill. Last question on this. So those 15, the whip is suspended?
Well, it's nothing to do with me. That would be a matter for...
But that's... Well, it sounds like you'd support that.
Well, I'm not spending much time thinking about them. I'm thinking about what we're doing to get homes built, what we're doing to help renters, what we're doing to cut energy bills because people are going through a cost of living crisis. You know, if you've got a handful of MPs who want to talk about different things, well, I'll leave that to them. 99% of us want to focus on making this country work for people at a time when we know a lot of families are really struggling.
The renters' rights bill, as you say, comes into effect. Boosts rights for renters in a number of areas, which I think everyone can see as a positive thing. At the same time, do you worry at all that the balance is right and that there might be some greater impact than you would have wanted in terms of the supply of rented accommodation, particularly from the private sector?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. We needed to change the law to protect renters because we were seeing the single biggest cause of homelessness is people being unfairly evicted from their home. That's banned as of Friday. Now, a lot of concerns were raised by people saying, well, if you bring in this law, does that mean you're going to see a lot of people kicked out of their homes in advance? In fact, for the last quarter, we've got data, which was up until the end of last year, unfair evictions were down 17% on the previous year. So we're not seeing an increase in evictions. What we're seeing is a continuing number of evictions that we've seen for years for no reason. But as of Friday, that's illegal. So those people who are living in fear right now that they could be evicted, as of Friday, thanks to this government, have security, the knowledge that their roof will not be taken away from over their families' heads.
And that's a good thing. And evictions, though, are obviously, thankfully, relatively rare compared to the whole stock of the number of people that are renting homes. Yes. Data from Savills showed that private rental stock fell 5% last year, already ahead of this bill. What about the fear generally that just general supply of rented accommodation will fall?
Well, we need to build more social and council housing as well. I think the balance is slightly wrong in this country. We've got a decent supply of privately rented and an inadequate amount of affordable and socially rented, including council housing. So last year, this government built over 10,000 new council homes. That is the biggest increase in this country for over 35 years, which is since records began. We've opened a funding pot of £39 billion to have the biggest increase in council and social housing that this country's seen in a generation. Now, doing that means we've got more better quality, affordable homes for people to go and live in, which means they won't be pushed into the private rented sector where rents are higher, and we can get people off the streets. And the number of people sleeping rough doubled under the previous government. We can't have people sleeping rough in our doorways. Everyone deserves a roof over their heads, and that's what we're focused on doing.
Well, we'll see what happens to private rental stock in the years ahead. On house building, you are behind your target, the run rate you need to hit your target of 1.5 million homes. Do you still think you'll hit that?
Well, that assumes that from the moment we were elected, we can get enough homes built from that moment. It was always going to be the case that more homes will be built towards the end of the Parliament than at the beginning.
But housing starts are down too.
Because first, well, they're up actually by 15%. But first of all, we had to change the planning rules because the planning rules were stopping housing getting built. So we've passed the Planning and Infrastructure Act. It came into force the very beginning of this year. I've changed the rules around building in London where there's been a particular crisis, so that speeds up. That's only just now coming into force, and actually housing starts are up by 15% this month compared to a year ago, so that's encouraging. Now, is it enough? No. I want it to see more, but we're seeing the reforms come into force, and that will mean we'll start to build at a faster rate as we move forward.
After obviously a big fall back half last year in housing starts, the simple point on this is you need to really deliver in the final couple of years. On the target to hit 1.5 million, and interesting to hear you kind of continue to commit to that. Let's hope you hit the target, but there's a lot of work to do.
We always knew it was going to need more towards the end than at the beginning of the Parliament because we had to change the rules first.
Can you rule out rent controls, temporary or otherwise?
Yeah, I've ruled it out in Parliament just a couple of weeks ago, and the reason we're doing that is the Scottish government tried it, the SNP and the Greens, when they were in coalition together. And it ended up with one of the biggest increases in rent people have ever seen and a reduction in the number of homes that were available to rent. Now, we need to be helping people in the cost of living crisis. I can see why it sounds like it would be a good thing, but practice in Scotland, in other countries, shows that if you bring in rent controls, rents go up, because when people move out, the landlords whack up the rents for fear that they won't be able to increase them again.
Just finally, Sky News has investigated Cowboy builders and found that only 43 were successfully prosecuted across Great Britain in the last year, despite tens of thousands of complaints by homeowners. What are you doing about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you for your investigation. I think it's a really important issue, and I know from my own caseload how devastating this issue can be to people. What the government's done is we've increased funding to councils by over £6 billion. That means they've got more money now to fund the trading standards operations, which have been stripped to the bone, so that when people complain to the council, there's somebody that can lead an investigation, work with the police where that's necessary, and really bring these cowboys bang to rights, because that's what we need to see.
Clearly that hasn't taken effect yet based on these numbers.
Well, the money only came in at the beginning of April. That's when councils got that increase in funding. So we're only at, what, the 28th?
No, that's, I guess that's exactly my point. In terms of qualifications, obviously there are qualifications for specialised areas, gas engineers, electricians, just like there are for doctors and lawyers, and then they can be held to specific standards. Should builders have that?
Well, I think we need to... I don't want to put more barriers in the way of getting construction workers out there, because we need good builders to build those 1.5 million homes that we need. But they must be held to minimum standards, absolutely. That's why we have trading standards. Where you've got really rogue builders, there are the police as well, and we'll prosecute people. But we need to put more resources into trading standards. That's one of the reasons we gave councils more money. Steve Reid, great to have you with us. Good luck on that 1.5 million target. Looking forward to checking in every year on it. The Housing Minister there, Steve Reid. Lots more still to come this morning.
Yeah, coming up on Mornings on Sky News, we'll be speaking to a former British ambassador to the US, all about the King's royal tour stateside.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Thanks for being with us this morning. Well, amidst the pleasantries of the state dinner in Washington last night, President Trump revealed some of their earlier private conversation, claiming that King Charles agrees that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, while talking up America's involvement in the war.
Our US correspondent Mark Stone was inside the room during the White House state dinner.
Well, that was quite a moment. Not very often you get to go to a state dinner at the White House, albeit for about 5 minutes. We listened to both the speeches. President Trump spoke first, and then the King. And, you know, President Trump's speech, most of it was not particularly interesting, but there was one bit where he ad-libbed. He went off script, and he talked about Iran, and he said Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, and he said, and the King agrees with me. That was a moment where he went political. And I have to say, the royal teams who are here from London, they were kind of really shocked that, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. So that was a moment that I think Buckingham Palace had been worried about, that the King would, that the president would veer off and say something that could just be a bit awkward for the king.
To say, joining us now is the former British ambassador to the United States, Sir Nigel Sheenwald. Great to have you with us. Very good morning to you. Before we get into the details, what have you made overall of the welcome of King Charles in the United States?
Well, I think it's been a very warm welcome, and I think if you look at the American papers, they're very clear about the messages, about the fact they've landed, and the fact that the King has exerted both intelligence and charm during his visit so far.
And quite a lot of humour, you might say, as well.
A lot of humour, particularly last night.
Yeah, which I think is a great thing to mix in with it all. And in terms of the welcome, could he have got a warmer welcome in Congress? You know, you've obviously been there close to it. It's rare you get cross-party, well, everyone in attendance and cross-party standing ovations, including on some quite political topics like Ukraine and NATO.
No, I think he melted the atmosphere a bit, and I think President Trump himself said last night he doesn't get that sort of reception. Politics has become much more extreme and divided in America, as everywhere else in the world, since his mother visited in 2007 or an earlier visit. So I think that is an achievement. But you know, I don't think American politics is going to suddenly become an atmosphere of unity, love, and everything else. It's the respect, I think, for him. For the history of this relationship and for the span of history that he's trying to cover in quite a deep speech.
Sir Nigel, what's your thoughts around whether Donald Trump will listen? You know, King Charles was essentially saying, remember the rule of law, and don't describe aircraft carrier as toys. How much will all of these messages land for the president, do you think?
I think to some degree, maybe briefly. Let's remember, on exactly the same day that the King was doing all this in Washington, the Department of Justice was arresting the former head of the FBI on charges which a lot of people would think were vindictive and highly personal. So I don't think it will change the fundamentals of Trump as a president, as a political operator. But I think he may think twice about the way that he's spoken about a close and intimate ally like the UK in the future. So if it does that, and only that, that will actually be quite helpful because, as the King said yesterday, words do matter. And the way that the president talks about allies can be very disparaging and harmful, actually, to American interests as well as to ours and our other allies.
Some coverage, Nigel, about how controversial it was or wasn't for the president to say at the dinner last night that the King agrees with him on not wanting Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Is it controversial? Or if it is a narrow comment about not wanting Iran to have a nuclear weapon, is it stating the obvious?
I think well, I don't think it's very controversial. I think it's unusual in protocol terms to do that. But I don't think that it matters in the sense that what the King said was actually British policy, as I understand it. The British government today, the one that asked him to go to Washington, believes that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. That's not in dispute between us. The reason why our government here has not played a full part in this war is that perhaps at the beginning didn't understand the aims of it and didn't want to get dragged into something that wasn't being consulted about and involved in the proper way. But they have lent support to the United States and certainly, I think, agree with that aim. They would have gone about it, I guess, in a different way.
Can we ask about these leaked comments about the current ambassador, the new ambassador to the US, Christian Turner, who clearly was questioning the genuineness of the special relationship, suggesting that America's only real special relationship with Israel, but went further. He said that the Prime Minister's future looked quite touch and go. He said that Keir Starmer's a stubborn guy. He speculated whether or not Labour would be able to get the threshold of 80 MPs that would remove him. Deeply, deeply uncomfortable comments for an ambassador to make, particularly when he's meant to be the new diplomatic, not political one.
As I understand it, those were remarks of a couple of months ago, which have
But that doesn't make it any better, does it?
Well, I think it means it wasn't intentional to do it, right up against the state visit. But I think we've seen hours of the President and the King talking about the UK-US relationship over the past day. I think that we ought to go by that rather than what the ambassador said a couple of months ago. What he was trying to say, I think, about the UK-US relationship is that you've got to be careful about the way that you talk about it. When we use this word special, often in the UK it's used in order to then go on and say it's over, it's ended. We've got a disagreement here, it'll never last. What the King was trying to say yesterday was that, over the 250 years of the history of our countries, there have been at least as many disagreements as moments of perfect harmony. So understanding the relationship, understanding the depth of it, which is the King also tried to present, is important. And understanding that America does have other very intense bilateral relationships which have their own meaning. The Israel relationship has a particular force in relation to the Middle East.
But I get all that about the UK-US relationship. Specifically, when you were ambassador to the US, you'd never say that the Prime Minister's future was touch and go and that he was a stubborn guy. I mean, whether you're speaking to school children or to politicians, is that not a terrible error for a senior diplomat?
No, people have to be trusted. Your audiences have to be trusted when you're speaking privately to them. And
it's the audience's fault.
No, it's
not the speaker's fault.
It's someone's fault in the audience for betraying a trust, because he was obviously speaking informally and off the record, and it's important for diplomats to be able to do that as well, to explain what's going on in their country and so on. So I wouldn't blow it out of all proportion. The story yesterday was, I think, about the King and the President and the Congress. I really don't think it was about our ambassador.
Sir Nigel, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Summer fast approaching, and many, of course, will be counting down the days to a potential holiday abroad.
But the war in the Middle East and the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz have triggered a major jet fuel shortage across Europe. So could summer holidays be at risk? Our business correspondent, Paul Kelso, has been taking a look.
Airlines are cancelling flights, and across the world, ministers are warning of jet fuel shortages. So are our summer holidays really under threat from the Iran war? Let's try and answer the question. The first thing to say is the price of jet fuel has gone up faster and further than any oil product, including petrol and diesel. It more than doubled in price after the war began and got to spikes higher than after the Ukraine war and the global financial crisis. And that is largely in part because there is a problem with supply and demand. This shows us supply of jet fuel in black. This excludes China and the Middle East for reasons I'll come back to. 5.7 million barrels a day produced. You can see it is short of global demand by 600,000 barrels. That's the red shaded area. And if you take that away, then airlines and the global economy have got a problem. Now, that is normally more than filled by exports from the Middle East, around 450,000 barrels a day, and China, 250,000. But through force, the Strait of Hormuz is closed, choking off the Middle East supply, and China has imposed an export ban to protect its domestic market. So you take that supply away, well, what's filling the gap? Now, Kepler, who are a trade analyst who provided these data, say that a chunk has come from jet fuel at sea. Now, there's always a quantity of jet fuel and other oil products at sea. It's either on its way to customers or perhaps it's waiting for the best price. Kepler say around 480,000 barrels a day has been drawn down to try and fill this demand gap. And you see, it hasn't completely filled it, but it has provided a buffer. But that buffer is now severely depleted. We can have a look at how that has taken effect. This is the global quantity of jet fuel at sea. If we look at the start of the war, the level is absolutely in keeping, a little bit more than the last couple of years. But since March, it has depleted fast, and that is putting airlines under stress. This is Lufthansa. Earlier this month, Europe's second largest carrier announced it was cutting 20,000 flights to save 40,000 tonnes of jet fuel that had doubled in price, and they were not alone. This chart shows us airlines that are cancelling flights. The deeper the red line, the deeper the cuts. Qatar and Etihad, close to the centre of the conflict, the big ones. Most of these are Asian airlines who were the first to be exposed to these shortages, but they're not alone at all. These are bigger airlines. Qatar, again, is the outlier, but British Airways is in here. Lufthansa's in here. United Airlines have announced they're cutting capacity by 5% for 6 months. KLM is doing the same. It should be said, this is a tiny sliver of global capacity, and there is no knowing whether jet fuel supplies will come to a crunch. But as long as prices remain high, as long as demand remains the same, well, it could well be that the cheap, plentiful, short-haul travel we have come to take for granted will come under severe pressure this summer.
And it does all come, by the way, I mean, obviously jet fuel is really in the eye of the storm, given all the points that Paul just made. But broad crude oil prices as well, you know, above 110 quite comfortably over the course of yesterday. And, you know, these are some of the highest levels of the war. So I do think there is, well, it just took a while to load there, so it's up another % today, Brent, $112 a barrel. And to state the obvious, it'll take 6 weeks for the ships to reach Europe as and when they do get transported. So I think there's some genuine concerns here going forward.
Yeah, and for so many people, as we said at the top of this story, affected by whether they even go ahead and book holidays or holding off, or companies having to make announcements on social media saying, you know, we won't introduce surcharges, we are OK, we've got enough jet fuel to last this summer at least from certain sectors. It does make you wonder, doesn't it, that these oil prices and the instability in them of late, how much that's affecting us all here in the UK and closer to home.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. Right, let's have a look at the weather next.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Plenty of warm sunshine on the way over the next few days, although it'll feel a bit cooler in the brisk wind. It'll turn more unsettled as we head into the bank holiday weekend. For today, any early fog in the north will soon lift, leaving sunny skies across the UK and Ireland this morning. It'll be largely dry, although the far southwest of England could see the odd shower. It will turn out warmer than yesterday, but England and Wales will keep the brisk wind, with gales developing on southern coasts and hills.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, still so much to come on mornings on Sky News. We're going to be talking about earlier testing and whether it could prevent thousands of women experiencing baby loss during pregnancy. Do stay with us.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal? Not like you said it.
From the UK?
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Big Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts watching us live. I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
We're going to talk about a sensitive topic now, but one that affects thousands of people in the UK every year, including me. Most of us either know someone who's experienced baby loss during pregnancy or directly experienced it. I lost a baby at 8 weeks. Now, the pregnancy and baby charity Tommy's claims that many of these miscarriages could have been prevented if additional measures are implemented at an earlier stage. So currently, the NHS will generally only conduct further tests after a third loss. But the charity says this leaves families feeling unsupported and their grief unrecognised. I'm joined now by Dr. Josna Vora, Director of Research for Programmes and Impact at Tommy's. Dr. Vora, thanks so much for joining us. I had a miscarriage at 8 weeks, and one of the things people don't always understand is that physical moment might be really early, but the impact lasts for such a long time after. Emotionally, why are women having to wait until they've experienced 3 miscarriages to have any kind of investigation? Morning to you.
Morning, and thank you for having me, and also thank you for sharing your experience, and I'm sorry for your loss. I don't know why currently it is that you have to wait for 3 miscarriages. It's guidance that's existed for a long time, but what Tommy's graded model of care shows is that even after the first miscarriage, if a person who's experienced this is provided with support and, you know, asked about their life, their lifestyle, looked at measures that can really support them, things like alcohol, tobacco intake, or even wider things that they can talk about their lifestyle measures that can improve it, can actually make a difference at that first miscarriage. And after second miscarriage, we can offer blood tests which can detect things like anemia and thyroid function. And after the third miscarriage, to have, you know, more specialist care. And after the second miscarriage, reassurance scans if they do fall pregnant. We found that this really does help and support women.
And I actually want to state here, this is the first time I've spoken about this baby loss, because I didn't have answers as to why it happened, so I buried it and kept it quiet. So for anyone watching, if you have experienced a miscarriage, it's not easy to talk about the experience and what happened. But you say at Tommy's that you could prevent 10,000 miscarriages a year. Talk me through that, help me understand how that could happen.
So first, we don't believe that anybody's miscarriage should be discounted and be told that, you know, just go away and try again. And that's why this model of care means that after every miscarriage, we actually try and take some action and provide support. So currently, as you mentioned, it takes 3 miscarriages before any additional support or specialist support is provided. What the graded model of care did is it provides a person who's even suffered 1 miscarriage with conversations, signposting, support, and if they do fall pregnant, it recommends progesterone if they are suffering early bleeding, which we know does support people to go on to have healthier pregnancies. And after the second miscarriage, if they suffered 1, then they're offered blood tests such as for anemia and thyroid function tests, which we all know can actually impact pregnancies and lead to miscarriages or lead to baby loss. And if they do fall pregnant, they're offered reassurance scans and provided with additional support. And after the third miscarriage, if they unfortunately suffer the third miscarriage, then they're offered more interrogative tests such as genetic testing and better understanding as to why and what could be the cause. And what this has shown is that in this pilot study, the women who were offered this graded model of care versus the women who weren't were shown to have 4% greater chance of reduced chance of miscarriage. And if you scale this up across the country, based on the number of miscarriages that we currently think happen every year, we don't actually count them, so we think this is an underestimate, it scales up to over 10,000 babies that could be going home with their parents every year.
That's so incredible. Talk to me a bit more about that postcode lottery, because people might not know this at home, actually. It's 1 in 4 women will experience a miscarriage. That's such a high number. But depending on where you are in the country, the aftercare can be remarkably different.
Yes. There is unfortunately a postcode lottery, and there are some centres that do offer support after the second miscarriage, but this is a postcode lottery, and what we're trying to do with the graded model of care and calling for its rollout nationally is to end that postcode lottery. We want every person who suffers a miscarriage to be able to have the support and care that they need.
Do you feel you have the backing for taking this further? Because I know it's a study, but anyone watching, going through it, having experienced it, they feel their voice isn't heard.
Well, we hope that we at Tommy's can provide a vehicle for their voice to be heard in this. We have been in close contact with the government. We have had some strong positive soundings. They actually talked about this report in the Women's Health Strategy and how they were looking forward to reading it. So we are positive that the government is ready to discuss this and talk about this, and we will be calling for a national rollout, and also for this national rollout to be built in with research so we can learn more as we go along.
OK, Dr. Vora, thank you so much for talking to us on this really, really important subject today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, Leah, the thanks to Dr. Vora, but much more so to you. I didn't know you were going to say that at all. I didn't know about it, and I was blown away. And, you know, you said there that people feel their voices aren't heard on this. I think you will have just meaningfully changed that for many people across the country, and hopefully leads to the type of action that you and Dr. Vora were talking about, to take this beyond just surveys and into government action.
Yeah, thank you so much. I felt so comfortable because anyone going through this, it's hard to talk up, but it's a space that I felt comfortable to do that, so thank you.
Well, thank you for speaking so bravely about that. We're going to have to take a quick break here at the end of the hour. We'll be back with all the day's top stories.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
Hello, good morning. It's 8 o'clock and this is Mornings on Sky News.
With Leah and Wilfred, good morning from me as well. Lots ahead.
Donald Trump claims the King agrees with him when it comes to Iran not having a nuclear weapon in his opening toast at the White House state dinner.
Pointed messages from the King, who calls on the US to help defend Ukraine and NATO in a historic speech to Congress.
The Prime Minister gets ready to face the final PMQs before next week's local elections, and after seeing off a Tory effort to make him face a parliamentary inquiry over the Mandelson vetting vow.
Also ahead, pop star and actress Self-Esteem tells us about her starring role in a West End reboot.
And a special investigation into the Cowboy builders ripping off homeowners and avoiding time behind bars.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. Well, the King has hailed the importance of the transatlantic relationship in a toast at a glittering state dinner in Washington, D.C. overnight with a warm and often funny speech.
But not before President Trump had revealed some of their earlier conversations, saying that King Charles agrees with him that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. Well, earlier in the evening, the King had made perhaps his most political remarks to date, calling directly on the US to support Ukraine and ignore what he called the clarion calls to become more inward-looking.
We'll bring you analysis from Washington in just a moment. But first, here's our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock.
White tie at the White House, topping off a day that had so far gone so smoothly until, during the toasts, Trump says this.
And we're doing a little Middle East work right now, two of you might know, and we're doing very well. We have militarily defeated that particular opponent, and we're never going to let that opponent ever, Charles agrees with me, even more than I do, we're never going to let that opponent have a nuclear weapon.
This is exactly what the palace had feared, a president off-piste, awkwardly unfiltered, and a deeply uncomfortable moment for the king, who's supposed to sit above politics. He carried on regardless with his long-planned speech.
When my mother visited in 1957, not the least of her tasks was to help put the special back into our relationship after a crisis in the Middle East. Nearly 70 years on, it is hard to imagine anything like that happening today.
It had all seemed so diplomatic earlier. With full fanfare, a dazzling display and a star-spangled welcome, White House style. Two countries, two old allies, but a backdrop of transatlantic tension. From Donald Trump came a love letter to British royalty.
Anytime the Queen was involved in a ceremony or anything, my mother would be glued to the television and she'd say, "Look, Donald, look how beautiful that is." She really did love the family, but I also remember her saying very clearly, "Charles, look, young Charles, he's so cute." My mother. My mother had a crush on Charles. Can you believe it?
Their Majesties King Charles III and Queen Camilla.
And then to Congress and the King's address. Quite possibly, this was his most political speech ever.
In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, when NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time, and the United Nations Security Council was united in the face of terror, we answered the call together. Today, Mr. Speaker, that same unyielding resolve is needed for the defense of Ukraine and her most courageous people.
12 standing ovations, one happy king, touched, we're told, by the warmth of the response. This address was certainly the centrepiece of the state visit, the British government's message to the US. And with the King's tone and tenor, They hope his well-chosen words will mollify the hardened stance of the president. The overriding focus, historic alliances over current political conflict. At least that was the plan. These off-the-cuff comments highlighting the risk of being in the room with an unpredictable president. Laura Bundock, Sky News in Washington.
Well, it has been a busy few days for the King, and there's still more to come. Our US correspondent David Blevins has the latest for you from Washington.
Well, the King's speech to Congress was supposed to last 20 minutes. It lasted 37. He had to pause so often for applause. 12 standing ovations. That's 9 more than his mother received when she addressed Congress back in 1991. And we saw something we've not seen during a State of the Union address for a decade. Bipartisan approval across the aisle. Remarkable when you consider just how political the speech got at times. The King didn't just remind them of their constitutional role in keeping a check on executive power. He urged them to support NATO and championed the cause of Ukraine. Now that is soft power with a hard edge, but it landed well because he struck the right tone, struck the right balance and disarmed them with his humour. The King has been very funny on this visit and the jokes continued at the state dinner. He brought the house down, a house filled with the leaders in innovation and technology, and alongside them members of cabinet, the British government represented by the Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper alongside her. Fresh from his Masters victory, the Northern Irish golfer Rory McIlroy and his wife Erica. I don't think the throwaway comment about the King supporting Donald Trump on Iran overshadows that. All it really does is suggest the president still doesn't fully appreciate that the monarchy is a non-political role. But the King did acknowledge what happened on Saturday night after the attempted assassination of the President of the United States. He said Donald Trump and his wife Melania had epitomised the old British term, keep calm and carry on. And that's exactly what the King and Queen will do now as they head to New York on day 3 of this royal tour.
David Blevins there. You know, it was such a historical moment, historical nods and loaded with subtext too, but one of the main takeaways from last night's state dinner was how funny King Charles was. He landed several lulls, laugh out loud moments, and one of them was actually, it was about language, wasn't it? And he joked to the president, and if it wasn't for the United Kingdom, you know, America might speak German or even French. Take a look.
Indeed, you recently commented, Mr. President, that if it were not for the United States, European countries would be speaking German. Dare I say that if it wasn't for us, you'd be speaking French.
That wasn't the only joke. There was another one as well relating to the on-off new White House ballroom.
On this occasion, I cannot help noticing the readjustments to the East Wing, Mr. President. Following your visit to Windsor Castle last year. And I'm sorry to say that we British, of course, made our own small attempt at real estate redevelopment of the White House in 1814.
So there you have it. He's actually funny.
He's really funny, but also delivers it quite, you know, they're quite punchy jokes as well, but everyone laughed. The other one as well, which he did in Congress earlier, was where he said, you know, 250 years ago, or as we would say in England, just the other day. That's brilliant stuff. I thought just on great form and brave to go there with those jokes.
That is the type of posturing that I think Donald Trump really receives quite well. You know, he's this former boss of The Apprentice on TV, and he responds well to jokes like that.
Well, I think he does when it's from the King. I'm not sure he...
But the King would have been the only person that could have landed those jokes, I think.
I agree. Well, more to come. Analysis from the state visit and the high-profile speeches from the King last night with Alistair Bruce at 9:30. So stay tuned for that.
Meantime, the Prime Minister has avoided a parliamentary investigation into whether he misled MPs over the appointment of Peter Mandelson as US Ambassador. But his troubles, well, they're far from over.
This afternoon, he'll have to face MPs again with PMQs, the last one before next week's local elections. Let's get back out to Alex, who's in Downing Street for us again this morning. And Alex, I thought it was interesting kind of tone from Steve Reid, which was kind of to be dismissive of the 15 MPs that voted against the government, as if to say they don't matter, the rest of us are focused on the job of the day. I guess it remains to be seen, and we'll find the answer in the coming weeks as to whether that's truly the case or not.
He was dismissive, wasn't he? He said, I'm not particularly bothered what happens to them. They're the usual suspects, which is the refrain used in Westminster for open critics who you expect to rebel against the government. But I think that might be a bit of a risky approach to take, given the bad mood in the Parliamentary Labour Party at the moment. Although the Prime Minister won that vote and won't face a Privileges Committee hearing over claims that he misled the House over Peter Mandelson's appointment, there is a lot of unhappiness that MPs were forced to vote on it in the first place. Many thought that he should have just referred himself to the Privileges Committee and exonerated himself if he had nothing to hide. So we wait to see what the government decides to do with the rebels, whether they suspend the whip and effectively kick them out of the parliamentary party for the time being. But his authority, I'm not sure it's in the place for him to do that at the moment.
And Alex, in terms of PMQs today, what can we expect? Is it going to be more of the same from Kemi Badenoch, or will there be a sense, having not won this vote on starting the Privileges Committee investigation, that it's time to move on?
I think there's a feeling among some Labour MPs and ministers that the Tories have got this a bit wrong with the timing. The timing being obviously just a week before the local elections. It's allowed them to sort of dismiss the motion as a political stunt, even if privately they might agree with the substance of it. But I think Kemi Badenoch will try and make hay out of it. She'll try and exploit the unease on the Labour backbenchers. And even if Keir Starmer did win the vote, I think she will claim that he's not got his MPs on side, and that may also burst into the open in the local elections next week.
Alex, thank you.
Now, a new report has found that more than 2/3 of toddlers under the age of 2 are using screens, some for up to 8 hours a day.
Yeah, it's a worrying figure, isn't it? And, of course, it comes just weeks after the government advised parents that kids that age shouldn't be using screens at all. Let's talk more with our correspondent, Graham Stothard. Graham, it's obvious, isn't it? Kids shouldn't really be on screen times for, well, 8 hours a day, but there's a growing problem in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were chatting, we were saying it's difficult because screens are absolutely everywhere. But ultimately, this report seems to echo government guidance that says, essentially, screen time for under 2 should be incredibly limited, if not non-existent. The key word there is should, because at the moment, it really isn't. This is a report from the 1001 Critical Days Foundation. This is a group set up by a former health minister, Dame Andrea Leadsom, and researchers found 70%, more than 2/3 of under 2s use screens a lot, essentially. That nearly 1/3 of newborns were watching them for more than 3 hours a day. Some, a meaningful minority, the report says, are watching them for up to 8 hours a day. 1 in 10 babies are regularly falling asleep watching screens. This is a concern because, of course, current evidence suggests increased screen use is linked to greater risk of obesity, short-sightedness.
And we were talking, weren't we? Because kids now are being born into a digital age. So as a parent myself, I feel like it's about managing what you have. I have a 6 and an 8-year-old, and it's not about unfiltered time, but it's about dedicated, managed time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Will Quince, he's the chief executive of this foundation. He's also another former health minister. And he says this isn't just a parent problem. Government guidance needs to be more clear. Tech companies as well may be slightly misleading parents, saying products are suitable for kids aged 0 and up. And actually, that needs to be looked at too. It does as well look into why children are using screens, and we're back to kind of what you said about that managed screen time. Sometimes it's for education, more often than not, though, it's for entertainment, it's to chat with friends. But it also looked at why parents and caregivers are allowing their kids to use screens. And a lot of that is just giving time for themselves to do chores, sometimes if they're working from home, to do their jobs. One parent apparently told researchers that it was kind of a survival skill for them to allow their children to use screens. But ultimately, if the government guidance says it's got to be strictly limited and only really to kind of talk to family, strictly managed, but the research says that actually, you know, some babies are watching it for up to 8 hours a day, then there's a gap there.
OK, Graham, thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Now, time to speak to John Swinney. On this show, we've been speaking to senior figures from the major political parties in Scotland as voters prepare to head to the polls next week. And as I mentioned, time now for the First Minister to join us, John Swinney. Good morning to you, First Minister. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
One Westminster-facing question first, if I may, before we get into all of the local issues, which is clearly the Prime Minister escaped a referral to the Privileges Committee yesterday. Do you think he was lucky to do so?
I think he was very lucky to do so, but it's got massive implications for the Labour Party, because there's countless Labour MPs are quoted this morning saying they feel part of a cover-up. And the cover-up is about the fact that the person who was at the absolute centre of the flawed decision to appoint Peter Mandelson as the ambassador to the United States was the Prime Minister. And lots of other people have lost their jobs, but not the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister is the person totally and utterly responsible. So I think the Prime Minister was very lucky to escape yesterday, but I don't think he can escape for much longer because of the political position he's been in. But the situation in the House of Commons yesterday made the Labour leader in Scotland an absolute laughingstock, because a few weeks ago he called for Keir Starmer to resign, but then yesterday he asked Scottish Labour MPs to faithfully vote to keep the Prime Minister in office, which they did. So it's just an example of the Labour Party in complete chaos.
But oddly, based on what you're saying there, do you actually agree with the Scottish Labour leader? Are you implying that the Prime Minister does deserve to lose his job?
I think the Prime Minister should resign. I think the person who is completely responsible for the decision to appoint Peter Mandelson to the role of ambassador in the United States, the most significant ambassadorial role in the United Kingdom, which we can all see was a completely flawed and inept decision. The person responsible for that was the Prime Minister, but various people have lost their jobs. Ollie Robbins, Morgan McSweeney, they've all lost their jobs. But the person who actually drove the decision was the Prime Minister. And we cannot have a Prime Minister who takes inept and incompetent decisions of the nature that he took about the appointment of Peter Mandelson. And the Prime Minister should face up to the accountability that he owes the public about this issue and should resign. Now, the fact that he whipped Labour MPs into the House of Commons to protect him last night is the worst possible look, because it makes Labour MPs complicit in a cover-up of the chaos of the Labour Party and their Prime Minister.
Let's talk about your performance in government in Scotland. And I wanted to start by asking about the health service. Has the performance of the health service in Scotland been good enough? And do you take responsibility for it?
I take responsibility for the performance of the health service, of course I do. And we've got progress that we've got to make, but we've been delivering that progress. When I became First Minister, I said that I would reduce long waits in our hospitals, and we are seeing those long waits coming down very dramatically, with data yesterday that shows a 75% reduction in long waits for outpatient treatment and over 50% reduction in long waits for inpatient treatment. So we can demonstrate that progress has been delivered, and I'm also expanding the access to GP services with the establishment of GP walk-in clinics around the country. And these will help to take some of the pressure off our GP services and make sure that people can get faster access to care and support in the community, and to tackle the ATM rush for appointments in our GP practices. So there's more to be done in the health service, and I'm entirely focused on making sure the whole weight of government is directed on making sure that performance is improved.
In the North Sea, should Edmund Aband approve Rosebank and Jackdaw?
We're going to be using oil and gas for some years to come. And the question that's got to be wrestled with about these developments is whether the development of these proposals is compatible with our journey to net zero in comparison to importing oil and gas that we may have to do as part of managing the energy requirements of the country in the period going forward. So fundamentally, the assessment has got to be undertaken as to whether these developments are compatible with our journey to net zero, and that is part of the journey that has got to be wrestled with in the decision-making on these questions.
I'm hoping that's a test of a fire alarm where you are. If you have to go, obviously...
I'm hoping it is, so that seems to be the test over and done with.
Well, again, if anyone tells you have to go, just go for it. In the meantime, just to follow up on that, does it mean Jackdaw and Rosebank should be approved?
What's got to be undertaken is an assessment of whether the development of those resources would be would have any more significant implications for our targets in achieving net zero than importing oil or gas from other locations. And that's the judgment that's got to be applied. And it's not a judgment for me, it's a UK government decision. I would like these issues to be determined by the Scottish Government. But we've also got to be mindful that the requirements that I've set out there are part of the requirements that are necessary in terms of court judgments, which ensure that any judgments made about new developments must be compatible with our journey to net zero. Now, clearly, the circumstances about oil and gas have changed quite dramatically because of the military intervention in Iran, and the questions around security of energy supply are issues that have to be wrestled with very carefully in assessing whether or not any of these applications should be approved in the future.
Sorry to come back to this. You said that you would like the Scottish Government to make these decisions going forward. If you were making this decision, would you approve Jackdaw or Rosebank?
Well, we'd have to assess the implications for our approach to net zero as to whether or not they would be, these developments would be justifiable. So that's a detailed exercise that would have to be undertaken to establish whether or not there was an approach which would be compatible with our journey to net zero. And that's an assessment that would have to be undertaken in detail to satisfy what are the legal arrangements that are now in place in relation to the scrutiny of any such applications.
Just finally, because I know we're nearly out of time, First Minister, what's the threshold in your eyes, depending how these elections go, for whether you can legitimately call for another independence referendum? I've seen the sort of different answers in the last month or so, but is it that you get a majority of the popular vote, or is it less than that?
I've set out very clearly that the circumstances that led to an independence referendum in 2014 arose because the SNP had won an overall majority in the Scottish Parliament. And that's what I'm aiming to achieve in the elections next Thursday, that the SNP win on our own an overall majority in the Scottish Parliament, because in 2011 that was what led to a referendum on Scotland's constitutional future. Now, I fundamentally believe that Scotland's future should be decided by the people of Scotland. There's been an independence supporting majority in the Scottish Parliament for the last 10 years, albeit made up of members of the Scottish National Party and the Green Party, both of whom support Scottish independence. But the only time where there has been a referendum on Scottish independence was when the SNP won an overall majority, and that's what I want to achieve next Thursday.
John Swinney, thanks for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, summer is fast approaching, and many of you will be counting down the days to a foreign getaway.
But the war in the Middle East and the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, of course, have triggered a major jet fuel shortage across Europe. So could summer holidays be at risk? Well, our business correspondent, Paul Kelso, has been digging into it.
Airlines are cancelling flights, and across the world, ministers are warning of jet fuel shortages. So are our summer holidays really under threat from the Iran war? Let's try and answer the question. The first thing to say is the price of jet fuel has gone up faster and further than any oil product, including petrol and diesel. It more than doubled in price after the war began and got to spikes higher than after the Ukraine war and the global financial crisis. And that is largely in part because there is a problem with supply and demand. This shows us supply of jet fuel in black. This excludes China and the Middle East for reasons I'll come back to. 5.7 million barrels a day produced. You can see it is short of global demand by 6 600,000 barrels. That's the red shaded area. And if you take that away, then airlines and the global economy have got a problem. Now, normally, that is normally more than filled by exports from the Middle East, around 450,000 barrels a day, and China, 250,000. But through force, the Strait of Hormuz is closed, choking off the Middle East supply, and China has imposed an export ban to protect its domestic market. So you take that supply away, well, what's filling the gap? Now, Kepler, who are a trade analyst who provided these data, say that a chunk has come from jet fuel at sea. Now, there's always a quantity of jet fuel and other oil products at sea. It's either on its way to customers or perhaps it's waiting for the best price. Kepler say around 480,000 barrels a day has been drawn down to try and fill this demand gap. And you see, it hasn't completely filled it, but it has provided a buffer. But that buffer is now severely depleted. We can have a look at how that has taken effect. This is the global quantity of jet fuel at sea. If we look at the start of the war, the level is absolutely in keeping, a little bit more than the last couple of years. But since March, it has depleted fast, and that is putting airlines under stress. This is Lufthansa. Earlier this month, Europe's second largest carrier announced it was cutting 20,000 flights to save 40,000 tonnes of jet fuel that had doubled in price, and they were not alone. This chart shows us airlines that are cancelling flights. The deeper the red line, the deeper the cuts. Qatar and Etihad, close to the centre of the conflict, the big ones. And most of these are Asian airlines who were the first to be exposed to these shortages, but they're not alone at all. These are bigger airlines. Qatar, again, is the outlier, but British Airways is in here. Lufthansa's in here. United Airlines have announced they're cutting capacity by 5% for 6 months. KLM is doing the same. It should be said, this is a tiny sliver of global capacity, and there is no knowing whether jet fuel supplies will come to a crunch. But as long as prices remain high, as long as demand remains the same, well, it could well be that the cheap, plentiful, short-haul travel we have come to take for granted will come under severe pressure this summer.
I mean, obviously that's the jet fuel part of it. Also just worth dwelling on where the broad crude oil prices are, and in the US price, WTI back above 100, Brent, the international gauge, back above 110, in fact 112 this morning. Jet fuel's one of the knock-on effects for how it hits people here in their pockets, as is obviously petrol prices and diesel prices at the pump. The other is borrowing costs, and this got a lot of coverage yesterday. We'll obviously be keeping an eye on this. The UK bond markets have now opened today, and it's kind of flat, but the UK 10-year borrowing cost rose above 5% yesterday. So, you know, I think our economy, more than most, it is really having these knock-on effects.
Yeah, and people are feeling this at home, no doubt, because I know that I've delayed going abroad. I would have had it booked and sorted round about now. Be interesting to know whether people are deciding, since the breakout of the war in Iran, whether they will have a staycation instead to avoid any cancellations. It's really quite interesting. But also the price of a ticket now for, say, a family of 4 has gone up hugely since all of this broke out. So, yeah, hard times, decisions for people to make.
Certainly is. By the way, get in touch with us if you want to share your stories, mornings@sky.uk. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll speak to the stars of the hit West End show Teeth and Smiles, including music star Self-Esteem.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighbourhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
Been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story.
The battle for number 10.
Sky News has been given exclusive access.
Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget.
Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Welcome back. Let's talk about Formula One. The 2026 season is, of course, underway, has been for some time now, but it got off to a shaky start when the Bahrain and Saudi Arabia races were cancelled as a result of the conflict in the Middle East.
Yeah, now Silverstone, the home of British Grand Prix, has offered to step in if some more races in the region have to be called off. Our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, reports.
Are you ready for this, ladies and gentlemen? It's lights out and away we go.
2 Grand Prix already cancelled. No certainty it will be safe for the other 2 in the Gulf this year.
But there is no way past the top 3, all through in the same order.
But rather than finishing early, Sky News can reveal a contingency plan forming.
Dropped a couple of places at the start as Verstappen lead.
July might not be the only time a race is staged here this year, with Silverstone offering to save the end of the season if those Middle East races cannot be held.
So if they can't race in Qatar and Abu Dhabi, this is the circuit that guarantees crowds, with 500,000 making the British Grand Prix the best attended in 2025.
I have offered because we stepped in during COVID and we were able to help Formula One, and if that would help, then of course we will. You know, there are numerous practicalities that need to be considered, and so you know the offer's in. They know we're here, and we can move quickly if asked.
You've got spare windows in the year to be able to hold additional races.
I pride myself on not having spare windows, but everything's movable in a crisis.
F1 bosses are hoping the crisis is over by November. Even though there's a ceasefire, Donald Trump has been threatening to resume the war on Iran.
Everyone can just look at the TV and see the news every day that this situation is so fluid and so dynamic, and nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone in September and October. We have a long period of time until our events that we need to go back to the Middle East region.
For teams, there's the financial impact of the conflict, with oil prices rising and logistical challenges increasing.
Obviously, there are headaches and complexities that we have to navigate, but these aren't, daggers in the heart or anything like that at this moment in time. These are things that we can easily navigate. Of course, everyone sees increased costs, increased burdens, moving things through different routes, but we're managing to do that effectively.
While the Middle East is a key source of revenue for F1, the brains of the sport are based in Britain, home to 10 of the 11 teams. And after being shut down for 5 weeks by the war, F1's focused on resuming in Miami this weekend, looking for no more disruptions, but knowing they can always come back here. Rob Harris, Sky News, Silverstone.
Now, London's West End has revived the play Teeth and Smiles for its 50th anniversary.
The ship is sinking and the time is running out. We got water coming in places we don't know about. The tide is rising, it's covering us.
That's right, Teeth and Smiles. It tells the tale of a failing 1960s rock band whose lead singer collapses into, well, self-destruction, I think. Let's bring in the stars of the show, Rebecca Lucy Taylor, also known as Self-Esteem, and actor Michael Fox. Great to have you both on the show. Rebecca, you've got a set of lungs on you, haven't you?
Yeah. And I didn't realise their capacity until this job, actually. But, yeah, so far, they're holding in there.
Talk to me a bit about Maggie as a character who we saw singing there. Chaotic, bleary-eyed. What did you see in her, though?
I feel like she's reacting completely reasonably to the situation she's in. I keep describing it as me as if there was a new series of Blackadder and it was Self-Esteem in the 70s. So she's in a band, she's the most exciting part of the band. It's just the reason the band do well in any way. But the rest of the band find her, they just kind of really dislike her. They leave her out, they can't stand her. So she drinks because she's so bored and lonely. But I don't think she's just a mess.
Yes.
I think she's the most intelligent.
And Michael?
I think she's searching for meaning. She's searching for something greater than just playing in gigs every night relentlessly. And I think she drinks to disengage from that thing, because the play exists when it feels like the meaning has kind of left them. We're at the end of the Acid Dream, 1969.
Yeah.
They thought, when they were writing these songs, that something might shift, that their music might be able to move the needle, reshape a way of thinking, reshape society. They believed that. But it's turning more grayscale now, and I think it's the result of that. I think that so I play Arthur, who writes the songs for the Skins, and when Maggie and Arthur first meet, they're sort of fused by this incredible chemistry to kind of make something that is special, and we're just kind of slightly beyond that now.
Yeah, lots of people have spoken about that chemistry that you've managed to bring to the stage. How does that come about, you know? Because in this industry, you know, you're thrown together with people that perhaps you don't know and you just have to make it work. Is that the same in theatre? You spend a bit of time off stage to getting to know each other?
We're all quite obsessed with each other. Like, there's a particularly lovely vibe on this job. Like, and the music, there's so much chemistry in the music and the push and pull of that. So that sort of does a bit of the work for you. I don't know. I've not done much acting, so it's been quite weird because you... Why is it on Sky News going like, you actually feel the feelings?
But I think that's a really important and interesting point. And Michael, it's good to get your take, you know.
Yeah.
What was it, the 5th and 6th series of Downton Abbey?
Yeah.
So different from being live on stage.
Yeah.
That connection that you get with an audience.
Yeah.
Was that one of the reasons that drew you to this?
I mean, that's why I love theatre. That's like what it is. You can feel the temperature in the room change. You know, I think you can... The chemistry, people talk about chemistry, it's essentially just like feeling like you're not imposing and you're just there with the other person in real time. And that's what people pick up on, I think. And you can't sort of fake that. You can try and do loads of kind of bells and whistles acting stuff, but really what it comes down to is just being there in real time and doing it. And when Rebecca makes me laugh on stage, I am actually laughing, you know, it is. And I think that's true for when we leave the stage and we're all hanging out, it's like we're still in the play, because the play exists backstage at a gig. So us making each other laugh on stage is also actors trying to make the other actor corpse, or it's kind of life imitating art in that way.
That's the draw of it, I think, as well. Like, you come for a night in the theatre with, like, I think the audience feel that too. There's like a jeopardy and an excitement and this like fizziness. It's such a fizzy play.
And just to wrap, do you want more people to come to the theatre? You know, Self-Esteem, people will know you from all of your music and your back catalogue, but it's not always seen as accessible, actually, is it?
Yeah, it's just so important. Like, as we get more disconnected as humans, like art is like the thing that gets neglected the most, but it's that exchange of energy in a room that connects you to being a human being at all. And the more distant you get from that, the worse things are getting. So, yeah, theatre is so important, and you know, accessibility and things like that is the tough thing about it. But without that form and without music, and you know, it's a bit of a bleak outlook.
Michael, when can people see it? How long is it running for?
It's on at the Duke of York's Theatre until June the 6th, and it's absolutely glorious, so come along, check us out.
Michael, Rebecca, thanks so much for joining us on Sky News.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. We're going to take a look at the latest weather now.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
OK, plenty of warm sunshine on the way over the next few days or so, although it will feel a bit cooler in the brisk wind. It will turn more unsettled too as we head into the bank holiday weekend. For today, at least, any early fog in the north will soon lift, leaving sunny skies across the UK and Ireland this morning. It'll be largely dry, although the far southwest of England could see the odd shower, and it will turn warmer than yesterday, and England and Wales will keep that brisk wind and gales developing on southern coasts and hills. And then just this afternoon, much the same, sunny for most, and just a bit more cloud and isolated showers for the far southwest.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking more about Sky News' special report on Cowboy builders with the broadcaster and consumer champion Dom Littlewood. Don't go anywhere.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
You tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK?
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way. The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to warn.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Tens of thousands of homeowners are ripped off by so-called cowboy builders every year, but a Sky News investigation has found that only a handful of them actually get prosecuted.
It seems to be a bit of a postcode lottery when it comes to putting rogue tradespeople behind bars, with some parts of the country simply too understaffed to investigate the complaints.
Meanwhile, people are being left out of pocket and in some cases without a proper home. Amelia Harper has the story.
Why did you fail to finish Steve's house?
Every year, thousands of us decide to improve our homes.
Probably the best part of a year I slept in the garage, just on the floor, because that at least had a roof.
But what happens when we hire the wrong person?
Probably not quite a breakdown, but possibly very, very close.
We take you inside the homes ruined by dodgy construction.
I chased the builder through telephone, text message, email. After some time, he stopped talking completely.
And conduct the most extensive ever investigation into Cowboy builders.
Currently, the state of play is almost at a tipping point, I would say.
We expose the scale of suspected criminality and find a system totally unfit to deal with it.
The whole thing is completely unregulated. We need to find the licensing regime, and if they don't get it right, they lose their license and then they lose their livelihood.
Well, Amelia joins us now to discuss this, the impact and the after effects for people when they've been ripped off by builders. You know, it can last a lifetime, essentially.
Yeah, that was a little sizzle, if you like, a little teaser of the full documentary that I've made looking at Cowboy builders. And what I've done is essentially the biggest ever investigation into Cowboy builders, because when I started looking into this, there was actually zero data anywhere on this. And I actually got put onto this by a homeowner who'd got in touch with me, and she had said, Amelia, I'm really stuck with what to do. I have had a builder come and do building work. He's left midway through the project. I've paid into 3 different bank accounts. This builder has given me different names. I've also spoken to other victims of the same builder, and I went to speak to all of them as well, and a similar story across all of these victims. And I just thought, look, if this is happening amongst a group of people locally, what's the national picture? So then I put in 350 plus freedom of information requests to every local authority across Great Britain, so England, Scotland and Wales. And what I was asking for was things like numbers of complaints, how those complaints were broken down, whether these were cases that were perhaps civil complaints, maybe things like contractual disputes, or whether these were potentially criminal problems, illegality within the construction sector. I was also asking for information on the enforcement side of things, because from that homeowner who got in touch with me, she said no one's looking at this. So I thought, right, what do we do to look into this? So I asked for numbers of trading standards officers across the country. Then we also looked at prosecutions, because I wanted to look at the full A to Z, if you like, how this ends up. And we essentially found that only 43 Cowboy builders were successfully prosecuted across Great Britain in the last year, despite tens of thousands of complaints by homeowners. So we found that 40,000 homeowners complained about building work going wrong. But this was really crucially what shocked me, was I discovered that around half of those complaints, over 17,500, involve suspected criminality. So these are people like you and I falling victim to suspected building scams or rogue traders. Then we had this postcode lottery on enforcement. And if you have a look on our website, to all of our viewers, you can have a look at how your area compares, because it seems that where you live has an impact on whether your case gets looked at.
Let's have a listen to what Steve Reed, the Housing Minister, had to say about this earlier.
I don't want to put more barriers in the way of getting construction workers out there, because we need good builders to build those 1.5 million homes that we need, but they must be held to minimum standards, absolutely. That's why we have trading standards. Where you've got really rogue builders, there are the police as well, and we'll prosecute people, but we need to put more resources into trading standards.
Well, let's get some reaction to that report from Dom Littlewood, consumer champion and TV presenter. Dom, morning to you.
Good morning there, Leah.
What do you make of Amelia's report there?
Amelia's picked up on something that I did for over 10 years when I chased Cowboy builders for Channel 5. Unfortunately, I mean, we exposed over 120 in our programmes, and we had quite a few prosecutions, but it was very, very hard getting there. Now, a lot of the problem can be with the fact that people at home, the homeowners themselves who want the work, are not necessarily doing enough due diligence on the actual builders themselves. Majority of builders are really good. They hate the Cowboy builders because of what it's doing to the industry, the name it's given. So what I say to people is don't trust rapport, because every builder, whether he's good or bad, will build a good rapport with you. They'll tell you how great they are, what they've done, etc. Do definitely trust your gut instinct. If something doesn't seem right, then look into that a little bit further. And when I say due diligence, when you ask for reviews and references from builders, we found out a lot of the builders we exposed, they had family and friends all saying this person did great work for me. Actually go round, knock on the door and say, look, I'm sorry to trouble you, I hope you don't mind. I'm about to employ Joe Bloggs to do some work. Would you recommend him? And even if they say yes, find out what he did, because if he went in and repaired a sink or a leaking tap, fine, he might be good at that. But if he's put in a roof extension, he might never have done one before. So due diligence is the secret here. You can't really rely on the prosecution service at the moment to back you up. And don't forget, there's over 30 different departments of a building trade, and only 2 of them regulated, gas and electric. The rest aren't. Anybody, Leah, this afternoon, you or Wilf could go and register as a builder and get yourself a limited company and straight away start trying to put bricks up and taking money off people. You know, there's no checks on it. You know, it's unbelievable. And a lot of people as well, this is a little bit, you know, dare I say, ignorance. Yeah. They think it's a limited company, that means somebody is good, they're registered and they know what they're doing. No, almost everybody can register a limited company. So don't be fooled by this. There's lots of review sites out there like Trustpilot, etc., where you can go on and delve deep into that builder. And if they're asking for cash, particularly a lot of cash, then that indicates a red flag because they may be having money troubles. There's also sites out there where you can look and check on county court judgments that have been issued against a builder. And it was a common denominator with all the ones we exposed. Quite often, they had loads of outstanding CCJs that they hadn't even paid off. They weren't worried about the system. So there's a few of the things there which I sort of told you to look out for.
Yeah.
What about websites with reviews there? Are there any that you really do trust or not?
Well, the big ones like Trustpilot do try their hardest to do reviews. There's also a lot of other ones out there which you know about, My Builder and I think the other ones out there. There's loads of them out there. So yes and no, because don't forget, when you go onto a site, not Trustpilot, but when you go onto a site that's recommending builders, they are getting a fee from the builder to be on that site. So, tread carefully. They are trying to check and sort of eliminate all the bad ones, but that's not guaranteed. Trustpilot aren't getting paid by builders. They're not getting paid by people leaving the reviews. So that's a reasonably well organised one and pretty trustworthy. But there's nothing beats saying to the builder, show me some of your work. But don't forget those pictures, including the ones on his websites, he could have picked up and he could have even created them with AI. So that's not a guarantee that's his work. But say, OK, what's the name of the person there? Can you give me the address? And go around and knock on the door and do 2 or 3, and literally, use your guts. If you think, hang on a second, this person and a half looks like the builder, he's the same age, could it be his brother, ask for 2 or 3 references. A genuine builder won't have a problem. And they'll also normally have quite a waiting list because they're getting work via references rather than people contacting them out of, online or just because they've seen them working on a house down the road. And don't forget that, that happens a lot. People see somebody working on a house down the road and they're assuming that person's good.
Dom, it's Amelia here. Lovely to speak. I'm interested, you've obviously been looking at this for a long, long time. I'm interested to know what, if any, changes you've seen in how Cowboy builders might be operating, because as part of my investigation, we spoke to a number of homeowners and we went to approach one of the builders who didn't have anything to say after he received £170,000 up front from his client. I'm interested in what you've seen over the years in terms of tactics that these builders might use to swindle homeowners into giving them money.
Well, Amelia, you've opened up a can of worms for yourself. When you said you've been contacted by people, I still to this day, Channel 5 sold out in the end and the programme got stopped making. Even to this day, I'm still getting inundated with people pleading for help. The industry is really, really suffering at the moment. And I think the system's got worse, Amelia. When I was doing it sort of 10 years or so ago, we had trading standards on our side. And sometimes they even contacted us and said, please, please investigate this person. Because the TV company had more finances, we had more researchers, we could do lots of the work and the due diligence ourselves. And then we went after the villains. We never, ever investigated anybody who wasn't really bad. And as I said earlier, the good builders were coming up when they saw me in the street, patting me on the back and saying, please, please continue to do it. And I think that has gone downhill now, Amelia. I think there's only about 200 trading standards official officers in Great Britain. It's not enough. They haven't got the funds, and they're finding it very hard to prosecute. One of the big problems is that homeowners who are affected quite often don't put in official complaints.
OK, Don, we'll have to leave it there. You are a treasure trove of tips this morning, and we really do appreciate everything that you've said. Really useful for those watching. And do share your own stories too. Email us here, mornings@sky.uk.
And more of Amelia's report, her full documentary, is available on the Sky News website if you haven't seen it already, so do check that out. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll have all of the day's top stories, of course, including the highlights, both the controversial comments and the humour from the King last night.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. This is Mornings on Sky News.
With Leah and Wilf. Good morning from me. Let's get at it.
The palace responds after Donald Trump claimed the king agreed with him when it comes to Iran not having a nuclear weapon in his opening toast at the White House state dinner.
Pointed messages from the king, who calls on the US to help defend Ukraine and NATO in an historic speech to Congress.
Prime Minister gets ready to face the final PMQs before next week's local elections after seeing off a Tory effort to make him face a parliamentary inquiry over the Mandelson vetting row.
Also today, why are more than 2/3 of toddlers under the age of 2 using screens, for some for up to 8 hours a day?
And a special investigation into the Cowboy builders ripping off homeowners and avoiding time behind bars.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the programme. Well, the King hailed the importance of the transatlantic relationship in a toast at a glittering state dinner in Washington, D.C. This was overnight with a warm and often funny speech.
But not before President Trump had revealed some of their earlier conversations, saying that King Charles agrees with him that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. Buckingham Palace has since responded, saying the King is mindful of his government's position on nuclear non-proliferation. And earlier in the evening, the King had made perhaps his most political remarks to date, directly calling on the US to support Ukraine and ignore what he called the clarion calls to become more inward-looking.
Yeah, we'll bring you the analysis from Washington in just a moment. But first, here's our royal correspondent, Laura Bondoc.
White tie at the White House, topping off a day that had so far gone so smoothly until, during the toasts, Trump says this.
And we're doing a little Middle East work right now, too, if you might know. And we're doing very well. We have militarily defeated that particular opponent. And we're never going to let that opponent ever, Charles agrees with me, even more than I do, we're never going to let that opponent have a nuclear weapon.
This is exactly what the palace had feared. A president off-piste, awkwardly unfiltered, and a deeply uncomfortable moment for the King, who's supposed to sit above politics. He carried on regardless with his long-planned speech.
When my mother visited in 1957, not the least of her tasks was to help put the special back into our relationship after a crisis in the Middle East. Nearly 70 years on, it is hard to imagine anything like that happening today.
It had all seemed so diplomatic earlier. With full fanfare, a dazzling display, and a star-spangled welcome, White House style. Two countries, two old allies, but a backdrop of transatlantic tension. From Donald Trump came a love letter to British royalty.
Anytime the Queen was involved in a ceremony or anything, my mother would be glued to the television and she'd say, "Look, Donald, look how beautiful that is." She really did love the family, but I also remember her saying very clearly, "Charles, look, young Charles, he's so cute." It's my mother. My mother had a crush on Charles. Can you believe it?
Their Majesties King Charles III and Queen Camilla.
And then to Congress and the King's address. Quite possibly, this was his most political speech ever.
In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, when NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time, and the United Nations Security Council was united in the face of terror, we answered the call together. Today, Mr. Speaker, that same unyielding resolve is needed for the defense of Ukraine and her most courageous people.
12 standing ovations, one happy King, touched, we're told, by the warmth of the response. This address was certainly the centrepiece of the state visit, the British government's message to the US. And with the King's tone and tenor, they hope his well-chosen words will mollify the hardened stance of the president. The overriding focus, historic alliances over current political conflict. At least that was the plan. These off-the-cuff comments highlighting the risk of being in the room with an unpredictable president. Laura Bondoc, Sky News in Washington.
Well, of course, there's more to come, and there was a lot of particular action last night. Our US correspondent David Blevins was up late following it all.
Well, the King's speech to Congress was supposed to last 20 minutes. It lasted 37. He had to pause so often for applause. 12 standing ovations. That's 9 more than his mother received when she addressed Congress back in 1991. And we saw something we've not seen during a State of the Union address for a decade. Bipartisan approval across the aisle. Remarkable when you consider just how political the speech got at times. The King didn't just remind them of their constitutional role in keeping a check on executive power. He urged them to support NATO and champion the cause of Ukraine. Now that is soft power with a hard edge, but it landed well because he struck the right tone, struck the right balance and disarmed them with his humour. The King has been very funny on this visit and the jokes continued at the state dinner. He brought the house down, a house filled with the leaders in innovation and technology, and alongside them members of cabinet, the British government represented by the Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper alongside her. Fresh from his Masters victory, the Northern Irish golfer Rory McIlroy and his wife Erica. I don't think the throwaway comment about the King supporting Donald Trump on Iran overshadows that. All it really does is suggest the president still doesn't fully appreciate that the monarchy is a non-political role. But the King did acknowledge what happened on Saturday night after the attempted assassination of the President of the United States. He said Donald Trump and his wife Melania had epitomised the old British term, keep calm and carry on. And that's exactly what the King and Queen will do now as they head to New York on day 3 of this royal tour.
So it's so interesting, isn't it? Given the seriousness of this tour, from Iran to the outbreak in the Middle East of the war, this soft power that King Charles has managed to bring in an often whimsical speech was actually quite fascinating. It's made you giggle a few times this morning.
No, absolutely. I thought the speech, particularly in Congress, was fantastic. But as we're alluding to here, the humour was brilliantly woven in. And here's a taste of a little bit of that from the dinner last night.
Indeed, you recently commented, Mr. President, that if it were not for the United States, European countries would be speaking German. Dare I say that if it wasn't for us, you'd be speaking French. On this occasion, I cannot help noticing the readjustments to the East Wing, Mr. President, following your visit to Windsor Castle last year. And I'm sorry to say that we British, of course, made our own small attempt at real estate redevelopment of the White House in 1814.
I thought he nailed it. And but by the way, most importantly, he nailed it on some of those touchy subjects that both Laura and David have already addressed, from NATO to the importance of respecting the rule of law to Ukraine, and at times got standing ovations in face of that, even from Republican supporters of Donald Trump. So, he threaded that needle, I think, very effectively.
Broken the ice, let's say, on a rather strained relationship, potentially, with Keir Starmer. And at past, Alistair Bruce will be here to unpick all of the events of last night too.
Now, the Prime Minister here avoided a parliamentary investigation into whether he misled MPs over the appointment of Peter Mandelson as US Ambassador yesterday, but his troubles are far from over.
Yeah, this afternoon he'll have to face MPs at what will be, no doubt, a pretty fiery PMQs, and the last one, actually, before next week's local elections, which are shaping up to be pretty divisive. Our political correspondent Alex Rogers is at Downing Street today. What can we expect from PMQs later today, Alex, and what's the atmosphere among Labour MPs?
I think we can expect the Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, to really try and exploit the unease on the Labour backbenches after that vote last night. Although the Prime Minister won it and he won't face the Privileges Committee probe, there was still lots of unhappiness from Labour MPs that they were being put in that position in the first place. Some thought that he should have just accepted the referral to the committee and not forced a vote. So I think we can expect some testy exchanges. She may also ask what he intends to do with the 15 Labour MPs that rebelled and did vote with the Tories. Is he going to suspend the whip? That's the usual course of action when Labour MPs break a 3-line whip. Or is he not going to act? And if he doesn't, I think Kemi Badenoch can accuse him of being weak and not having authority.
I guess it's kind of telling what Steve Reid was alluding to. He sort of just dismissed them as if he didn't care.
He did. He said he wasn't particularly bothered what happened to them and that they're the usual suspects, which is a kind of derisory term used for open critics of the government who you expect to rebel. But I think it's a bit risky to do that. I think it kind of it provokes some MPs who are unhappy. But I think it's also kind of expected from Steve Reid because he is a Starmer loyalist. But I think it just shows that the bad atmosphere that's in the Labour Party at the moment.
Alex, great stuff as always. We look forward to PMQs live midday. Of course, we'll have it for you live on Sky News.
Yeah, now tens of thousands of homeowners are being ripped off by so-called cowboy builders. It's happening every year, but a Sky News investigation has found that only a handful of them actually get prosecuted. It seems to be a bit of a postcode lottery when it comes to putting rogue tradespeople behind bars, with some parts of the country simply too understaffed to investigate complaints. Meanwhile, people are being left out of pocket and in some cases without a proper home. Amelia Harper has the story.
Why did you fail to finish Steve's house? Every year, thousands of us decide to improve our homes.
Probably the best part of a year I slept in the garage, just on the floor, because that at least had a roof.
But what happens when we hire the wrong person?
Probably not quite a breakdown, but possibly very, very close.
We take you inside the homes ruined by dodgy construction.
I chased the builder through telephone, text message, email. After some time, he stopped talking completely.
And conduct the most extensive ever investigation into cowboy builders.
Currently, the state of play is almost at a tipping point, I would say.
We expose the scale of suspected criminality and find a system totally unfit to deal with it.
The whole thing is completely unregulated. We need to find a licensing regime, and if they don't get it right, they lose their license and then they lose their livelihood.
Well, that was a taste of Amelia's documentary that she's made. The full one is available on Sky News website. She joins us now. Amelia, talk us through the sort of scale of this problem. You alluded to it there, and how many people this affects.
Lots is the short answer to this. So as part of this investigation, I put in 350 FOIs, freedom of information requests to councils across Great Britain, because I wanted to answer that question, because when I started looking into this, there's absolutely zero kind of national data on this issue. So I found that 40,000 homeowners complained about building works that went wrong in the last year. But what was really shocking to me was that I found that half of those involved suspected criminality. So this is homeowners falling victim to suspected building scams or rogue traders. And then, interestingly, also we found a complete postcode lottery on enforcement. You alluded to it there before that little teaser of the full documentary. There are over 1,300 trading standards staff. These actually include trainees and apprentices as well that actually investigate building crime. But we found that some areas actually had less than one full-time equivalent employee that was available to actually look at building crime in their area. And crucially, they also, Trading Standards staff, look at over 300 other pieces of legislation as well. Think food hygiene standards, illegal vapes, all of that sort of thing. So clearly inadequate staffing across the country, but it sits really within a picture of Trading Standards funding cuts. So in the piece, we speak to someone called Dr. Tim Day, who works for the Chartered Trading Standards Institute, which is the membership body for trading standards professionals. And he said to me that they had had their funding cut by 50% since 2010. So lots of things are falling through the cracks. And it really means that actually where you live could have a significant impact on whether your case is actually looked at.
Amelia, great stuff. Thanks so much for that. By the way, as I said before, the full report is on the Sky News website. If you have your own stories you want to share on this, please do get in touch and email mornings@sky.uk. Your own stories of this type of thing, but also any questions you might have for the team. A bit of breaking news as well. President Trump just posting on Truth Social what is, 4 a.m. in the US, of course, after a late night as well with the King. And
yeah, so he's tweeted on his Truth Social network saying Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon, signing off President Donald J. Trump. No more Mr. Nice Guy, you can see in big words there. One presumes an AI-generated
photo, yeah. I mean,
photo.
Look, oil prices have risen off the back of this. I mean, he was tweeting this, moments ago. Oil prices were up about 1.5% earlier in the programme. They're now up 2.5%. So we're up to 114 on Brent. We're basically back to the highs of this war. Needless to say, of course, the Strait hasn't been opened for the last couple of weeks, but at least there has been a ceasefire. We'll see if this AI-generated images as far as the explosions go, or if he's being serious, obviously, in the days ahead. More on that to come. Of course, a busy day ahead for the President and the King in the US, although the King has moved from DC now to New York. After the break, we'll speak to the Conservatives. Kevin Holleray joins us.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access.
Let me give you a sneak peek.
It was the day those present would never forget.
Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Welcome back. Let's speak to the Conservatives now. Delighted to say we're joined by the Conservative Party Chair, Kevin Hollinrick. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. So, no privileged committee investigation into the Prime Minister then. Lost the vote yesterday. Do you think Kemi Badenoch overplayed her hand on this issue?
Well, not according to 68 Labour members of Parliament. 15 voted with us to ask the Prime Minister to basically be held to account by the Privileged Committee, and 53 further Labour members of Parliament, despite a strong three-line whip, abstained. So this wasn't some kind of parliamentary kind of stunt, as some people have said. It's really about making sure the Prime Minister is held to account for his decisions and his judgments. And he clearly got his judgment wrong. He's admitted to that himself. But misleading the House is a very serious accusation. And he held other Prime Ministers to account for the similar things in the past. And we want to make sure the proper information is revealed, but also make sure the Prime Minister, when he says something to the Parliament or public, is telling the truth.
But obviously you've failed in that significant step towards doing that yesterday.
Well, he basically held his own members of Parliament under a three-line whip. So he had to whip his own members of Parliament to vote with him. That speaks to, most importantly, his weakness within the Labour Party, as well as his weakness in terms of how he runs his country. And of course, there are more important things that people want to talk about, like the cost of living crisis, and we want to talk about those things too. But that doesn't mean we don't hold the Prime Minister to account for his decisions and his judgment.
So many comparisons in the last couple of weeks to various moments in the Conservative Party government. Looking into this more, I hadn't actually realised you were one of the 13 Conservative MPs who rebelled against your government when it came to the Owen Paterson vote, November 2021. Do you feel like this is a similar moment?
Well, obviously there are similarities and there are differences. I personally thought Owen Paterson was guilty as charged, and therefore I couldn't vote with our government when we tried to defend him for what he had done. But I think,
how hard a decision was it to vote against your government?
It's a very difficult decision, and I saw some of the Labour members of Parliament in their lobbies last night and spoke to them. It is tough. Nobody does this willingly or happily, because you're loyal to your party. That's what you should be. But nevertheless, there are some things that are more important than party loyalty, and that you've got to put the country first. And that's what Labour members of Parliament did last night, the ones that voted with us. Because all of us want to get on to things like the cost of living crisis, to solving the issues in the Middle East, to working with the President across the ocean in the US in trying to make sure we move forward from these kind of issues, because these are affecting people's daily lives. But the critical success factor, the critical factor in any organisation is its leader. And we've got a very poor leader of this country, and we want to see him replaced.
When it comes to PMQs today, given you tried everything yesterday for the vote itself, is it time for Kemi Badenoch to move on the questioning? Locals a week away, you want to talk about cost of living, you want to talk about that. You had a full day on this yesterday. What should her first question be?
Well, that'd be better for her. I won't tell Kemi Badenoch what to do. She's got a great instinct for the right things to do. But when I speak to Kemi, I know that she wants to talk about the economy. She wants to talk about the people's job prospects. We've seen over 300,000 more people added to the ranks of the unemployed. She wants to talk about welfare, reforming welfare to reduce people's taxes and cut stamp duty and lower business rates for businesses up and down the country. All those things she wants to talk about. And she has a tough job as leader of the opposition, but she's doing that job extremely well. She's now the most admired and most approved of leader in the country, political leader, and she's the person that according to the polls, people would most like to see as leader of this country. And I think that's true, and I think I agree with that. But clearly, the world of politics, we've got to do that as the opposition by holding this government to account, and that's what she's doing very successfully, I think.
Renters' Rights Act comes into effect later this week. A central part of it is abolishing no-fault evictions. Is that's something you support, that your party tried to enact itself?
Well, I never supported it. I spoke out against it when we were in government because, listen, I've not been a politician all my life. I've been in business before politics. I was an estate agent. When I started in business back in 1985, if you wanted to rent something, you had a choice of a couple of dark, dingy, damp terraced houses in York, where I started my professional life in a estate agency. And that's because we had rent controls. We had rules around things like no-fault evictions. You couldn't do that, which reduced the amount of money that people invested in the property market. Back then, there was a much lower level of rented property as a percentage of overall stock in the UK because investors were not incentivised to invest in the property market. And I think we're going back to that point in time where investors will think twice about buying a property to let. And ultimately, supply is the best thing you can give for tenants. So you have more choice, it keeps rents down and improves the quality of housing. That's what it does. The Renters' Rights Bill will affect that. It will deter investors and landlords from buying property in the first place to rent out, which is very bad for tenants.
I mean, on the topic of supply, I think, house building has been a disappointment for decades across governments, I think it's fair to say. Finally, local elections. There's a lot of focus, obviously, on how Labour does, how the government does. As chairman of the party, what is OK? I don't think you want to do brilliantly. What is OK as a percentage of the vote? If it's below 15, will you be gutted?
Well, can I just say on house building, we're at record levels of house building, for a 50-year record under a Conservative administration. Anyway, back to the point you asked me.
Briefly, and I think it's fair to say any long-term chart of this, over which you were in power for 14 years, we haven't built enough houses.
No, I agree with that, but we're at record levels of over 50-year record anyway under Conservative administration. We can have a proper discussion of that some other time. OK, so these elections, I mean, we are coming from a low base, of course, in terms of where we have been. 2024, of course, we lost trust with the public. We made some mistakes. We did some good things in office. We made some mistakes. We are rebuilding trust, and you rebuild that under a strong leader, and that's what we've got in Kemi Badenoch. We have more work to do. I think we lost 2/3 of our seats last year in the local elections. May the 7th, we're hoping to do better than that. I won't put the exact number on it, but what we're hearing up and down the country, everywhere I go, is people are seeing that the Conservatives are back in town. We've got the right leader. We've got the right kind of policies. We've got, if you live in an area that's where you've got Conservative administration, we've got, on average, the lowest council tax band D in the country on average. We have a better record in terms of our local services, our local councils, our councillors. So I think we need to make the case why it's better to live under a Conservative administration, whether that's locally or nationally. And that's what we're very keen to do.
We shall see in just over a week's time. Kevin Holloway, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the King's trip to the US with our royal commentator, Alistair Bruce. Welcome back. Our royal commentator Alistair Bruce is here to reflect on the King's state visit and the King's big moments in the limelight, which we were building up to yesterday, which, you know, to have as many standing ovations as he had in Congress, he must be delighted about.
I think it must be very overwhelming for the King to go into the House of Representatives on the Capitol, driving up there, and to not know what kind of reaction you're going to get, knowing the burden of responsibility he had to the government to try and deliver something in that environment. And he did, and it worked really well. And he landed his particular style of charm and humour and self-deference really well, I think. And he got his messages across, and they were strong messages, and they were counter to what one feels is the drive of the current executive in America. So I think it was very courageous.
Was there anything in the speech that you heard that really surprised you?
Well, I don't think I was surprised about the way he dwelt on history, but the way he used history, not so much as a cudgel, but certainly as a sense that this is the ironing board on which America needs to judge its own creases. And I think that he does that very, very well. And he comes with unique authority because he is the descendant of all the sovereigns of a long line that America are aware about and is just as much a part of American history, in a sense, as it is over here. So he had that unique authority from which to talk from, and I think it worked with humour very well.
Do you think he will successfully iron out those creases, or whether
that is over to somebody else?
Crumpled?
He will. I mean, I think the moment the King and Queen leave the United States, who knows where we'll go? But I think that an impact has been made, and the fact that it was made in Congress. Congress, in a way, is a body that will remember for a long time. The President, of course, has another few years to go, and who knows what will happen after that. But Congress will remember the impact of what the King has said.
And to be clear, you know, these standing ovations involved Republicans when it related to topics like NATO and Ukraine, so it was quite striking that. There's been a bit of coverage as well, Alistair, about the fact that the President then said at the dinner, the King agrees with me that we don't want Iran to get nuclear weapons. Is that controversial, or is that stating the obvious? Because it's not saying the King agrees with me that this is a great war.
Well, what he said was Charles agreed, and I think that that emphasises the friendship that's clearly developed. But I sense that if the King did go along with what the President was saying, he would have said, my government agrees with this and holds the same view. And, you know, I think the people planning this from the British side must be thankful that the President didn't say, Charles thinks it's a good idea if I take Greenland. I mean, I think it could have gone anywhere. But the fact that that was all that was let out of the bag, I think is probably manageable.
And how significant, Alistair, is the visit to the 9/11 memorial from the King and the Queen later?
Well, it's the 25th anniversary. It is profound. It is one of those moments that I think those of us who were alive will not forget. It was an impact on America, which, as a nation, sometimes it takes fright easily. And I think that it impacted such a lot of what then happened in the world that we are still dealing with the consequences of that moment. And, you know, the fact that NATO sprang into action and responded to the attack on the United States, all of which the King referred to. I think for the King to go there and lay his wreath, it echoes perhaps one of the most powerful things his mother did when she used that phrase, grief is the price we pay for love, which is now inscribed in one of the most significant churches in the centre of New York, St. Thomas on Fifth Avenue. And I think for the King to go there himself, it impacted my generation immensely, and the whole world. So I think to play their part in that, a lot of people from the United Kingdom who were working in America were killed in that event. And as I say, it affected so many people.
What else is on the agenda for the rest of the trip? Obviously, that's the sort of focal point in New York this morning. What else is to come?
Well, the Queen is going to the Public Library of New York, and there she will meet Winnie the Pooh, and the actual Winnie the Pooh, who was the teddy bear of Christopher Robin. So, I mean, I think that the whole of that element she will use to develop those things she cares about, reading, literature, and all the links that exist in the lexicon of the English language that, after all, we share and is a pivot point for the two nations.
I got very excited there when he said the actual Winnie the Pooh. I thought, I see really
It will be
well,
quite
the
a
teddy
moment.
bear about which the whole thing was written by A.M. Milne, so...
Great stuff, as always, Alistair. Thanks for joining us. And we will have full coverage, of course, of the ongoing state visit to the US for King Charles throughout the day here on Sky News.
Now, the Prime Minister has avoided a parliamentary investigation into whether he misled MPs over the appointment of Peter Mandelson as US Ambassador after Morgan McSweeney and Sir Philip Barton gave evidence over the appointment of Mandelson to the Foreign Affairs Committee. This afternoon, Starmer will have to face MPs at what will no doubt be a fiery PMQs. We're joined now by Kieran Martin, former senior civil servant and national security officer. Kieran, thanks so much for joining us. You're a friend of Sir Ollie Robbins. How is he doing?
I think, given where we started this process nearly 2 weeks ago, he's doing well. I think it was pretty obvious to anybody who watched. He gave a very full and very impressive account of himself in Parliament last Tuesday in front of Dame Emily Thornberry and her committee. And I think that account, that the story that the Prime Minister put out in defence of firing him was completely wrong. I think that account has been completely corroborated by everything we've seen since. So I think Sir Ollie was obviously still very, very disappointed to have lost the job he loved and was doing really well. You know, he's ready to move on. The facts vindicate him.
Where do you stand if we kind of take some of the key points from yesterday's testimony from Sir Philip Barton and Morgan McSweeney? Where do you stand on the assessment as to whether or not the full process, to use the Prime Minister's words to Parliament, was followed or not in the appointment of Peter Mandelson?
So in terms of what happened in the Foreign Affairs Committee this week, I don't think we learned a great deal new from either Sir Philip Barton or Mr McSweeney in their own very different ways, because obviously they're very different people and they had very different roles. They corroborated the first part of Sir Ollie's account, which is essentially the Prime Minister came up with this idea to appoint Peter Mandelson. The Foreign Office thought that's a terrible idea. Number 10 said, do it anyway and do it as quickly as you can. And that came across very fully yesterday in 2 different ways. What we learned a lot from was a much less noticed written document given to the committee on Monday night. It was signed by a man called Nick Dyer. He's Sir Ollie's interim replacement, but it's an official government document. It's very full, it's very candid, it's 8 pages long, and it talks about what happened with the vetting, the other part. And I'm really sorry to bring you and viewers back to the intricacies of the British vetting system, but that was the basis of the dismissal. And in that document, it completely corroborates everything Sir Ollie says and completely discredits everything the Prime Minister and the government have said. And the key bit is this narrative that the Prime Minister and the government put out that something called the UK Security and Vetting Agency failed Peter Mandelson. Sir Ollie overruled it and didn't tell the Prime Minister. And they even released this template to say, look, this big red box was ticked. Well, what the Foreign Office, what the lead government department said in this document, and I'm quoting, is that in that paperwork, UKSV passed it on to the Foreign Office and said, overall, I believe this is a very borderline case. And essentially said to the Foreign Office, if you want to pass them, because that's your call, not ours, then put in place some risk mitigation, some robust risk mitigation. They also said that this sort of thing happened at least once a month. So the whole case the Prime Minister put forward collapses, and he got this process back to front twice, and he made 2 serious mistakes. First, when he hired Peter Mandelson, it was hire first, hire fast, find out the facts later. That was wrong, and he's admitted it. In this case, with Sir Ollie's dismissal, it was fire first, fire fast, find out the facts later. The only difference between these 2 serious mistakes is that he's owned up to one and he hasn't owned up to another, and instead we've had this insane 2 wasted weeks of the government running around abusing the institutions of power to try and stack up a story that doesn't make any sense and basically isn't true.
Can I ask you an altogether different question, Kieran, that came out of Sir Philip Barton's testimony? It came out as well a little bit earlier, but it seemed more like a one-off case in Sir Ollie Robbins' testimony as well. But Philip Barton made clear that, in fact, maybe it's not commonplace, but it's certainly not rare for senior civil servants to keep things from the minister they serve. I think that has struck quite a lot of people as very surprising. It's certainly struck Dame Emily Thornberry as very surprising. I mean, is that really right that elected officials have information withheld from them?
So I get that, but I would actually refer you back to Siroli's evidence, where he dealt with that very, very fully, and he talked about Dame Emily quite correctly quoted the Civil Service Code at him, and he said that, like the Book of Common Prayer, he'd committed the code to memory, and he gave loads of examples. He gave a great example about the evacuation of the British embassy in Iran, where it's his decision because he's the legal employer. If something goes wrong, he's legally responsible to the families of British diplomats if something happens. So it was his decision, but he consulted the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, throughout that process. That's his instinct. There are special things about vetting, which when the Prime Minister came out...
I know, but I'm not... Forgive me, moving on to just generally the civil service, I'm not talking about vetting again, and I guess that example highlights how he still did consult the minister. I mean, the striking point was that it is a norm in the civil service for things to be kept from ministers.
No, it isn't, and I think Siroli dealt with that. And speaking for myself, in my 23-year career, I did not withhold things from ministers. In fact, I can think of various ministers who said, please, why are you telling me that? Please go away and come back when you have something interesting to tell me. I think just in this case, I have to mention vetting. I won't go into any detail, but there is something specific about vetting. The Prime Minister didn't understand it, and that's why when he first came out to Sky News on the Friday after he sacked Siroli, he gave an account of the case that was wrong, not because he was lying, but because he didn't know what he was talking about, because he hadn't bothered to find out the facts about the process that was at stake here. So it is not normal practice for civil servants to withhold things from ministers. It was not my practice. Siroli said it wasn't his practice. There are countless former civil servants who would say that. Often, for example, in national security, you might only tell a Secretary of State, you might only tell the Prime Minister. You might not involve more junior ministers because, for example, partners from the United States might say this must be kept close hold, and national security officials like Siroli was in his time, would be under strict instructions to have very limited distribution of information, but wholesale withholding of information to ministers, absolutely not common practice at all.
Ciara Martin, thanks so much for joining us. Really interesting.
Thank you.
We're going to have a quick look at the weather next.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything. Travel insurance, I ticked that box. Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Plenty of warm sunshine on the way over the next few days, although it'll feel a bit cooler in the brisk wind. It will turn more unsettled as we head into the bank holiday weekend. For today, any early fog in the north will soon lift, leaving sunny skies across the UK and Ireland this morning. It'll be largely dry, although the far southwest of England could see the odd shower. It will turn out warmer than yesterday, but England and Wales will keep the brisk wind with gales developing on southern coasts and hills. This afternoon stays much the same, sunny for most, with just a bit more cloud and isolated showers in the far southwest.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
We're going to talk more about children's screen time, toddlers in particular, with Andrea Ledson. That's next.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK?
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Who's 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's running out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides. And it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Big Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News. Is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
Now, a new report has found that more than 2/3 of toddlers under the age of 2 are using screens, and some for up to 8 hours a day.
It's a worrying figure. Of course, comes just weeks after the government advised parents that kids that age shouldn't be using screens at all.
Now, the research was commissioned by the 1001 Critical Days Foundation, a charity that works to improve the health of babies up to the age of 2 years old. And please say we're joined now by its founder and former Health Minister, Dame Andrea Leadsom. Dame Andrea, thanks so much for joining us. Important, isn't it, the name of the charity, 1001 Days, because up to the age of 2 is like a sponge for a child, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. Pregnancy to age 2, we are so underdeveloped as human beings. We're actually born about 2 years premature. And in that first 2 years, our brains are putting on billions of neural connections every minute. So the experiences that you have in that period really shape your lifelong physical and mental well-being.
And we're right to interpret the data in this that some under 2-year-olds are doing 8 hours a day?
A small minority, but almost 30% of under 2-year-olds are having more than 3 hours screen time a day. And I do want to be very clear here that parents have not been given very careful scientific advice on why they shouldn't do that. And you can totally understand it from their point of view. You know, if you're trying to get the meal on the table, if you're trying to do the washing, if you're trying to get some sleep, very easy to give your baby a screen. And also, I think a lot of parents find it soothes the baby, except, again, the research shows that it doesn't soothe the baby. In fact, it disturbs the baby's sleep. So parents who give their babies lots of screen time find their child sleeps for less time and is more disturbed.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because whether you allow your child to have screen time or not, or you manage it really well, there will be parents that say, look, this is extra guilt. On all the advice that we get, if you're working from home and it's the only option to give your child a device so that you can carry on with work or you can carry on with these daily chores, what do you say to them?
Yeah, and this is the challenge. I mean, as early as advisor to the government, we did a big research project into what do parents feel they need to be confident parents. And the thing above all else that they said to us is they need information. What does it take to be a confident parent? And so, yes, exactly, parents are hard-pressed. It's joyful but really hard work having a baby. And they need much more information so they can make good choices. So there is some evidence in this global review that actually co-watching with a baby could be actually helpful, certainly not as harmful, but at the same time, a lot of screen time, not just a tiny bit, but, you know, the sort of 3 hours a day that a lot of babies are getting is actually quite harmful, and it's not in your interest. So far from soothing your baby, you know, 1 in 10 babies go to sleep with a device, and some parents say you then have to sort of wrestle it out of their little hands when they're asleep.
But the other side of this, though, parents will say, if there was affordable childcare, that would help us out. We wouldn't have to give the iPad. We wouldn't have to, you know, resort to digital childcare in a way.
Well, I'm not sure that that necessarily follows, because for a lot of parents, you know, at the moment, as we know, childcare, taxpayer-funded childcare comes in at 9 months if you're both working. But what we're talking about here is the screen time that's at meal times, and there's evidence that that stops your small one from understanding that they've stopped being hungry. So there's a link with obesity. So things like that, those are very serious issues that parents will want to know about. Every parent wants to be a good parent, and what government, what society needs to do is to give them alternatives. As Minister, we established the Family Hubs and Start for Life programme, and I'm delighted that the new government has carried on and expanded that programme, including healthy babies. And actually, those sorts of one-stop shops where you can go with your baby, you can do stay and play, you can get some therapy for yourself, a cup of tea, meet some friends, actually get some distractions that aren't digital-based. Those are the kinds of replacements that parents need, so that they, for their own mental health, that they can actually find themselves within a community. So I would point to that rather than childcare as the solution.
Obviously, you're focused on very young children in
yes.
this. Do you, though, support the ban of social media for under 16s? Do you think that will be something that's helpful in general?
Absolutely. But there's a very big difference. At teenage, you're worrying about the content of social media, the algorithms that sort of tell you, yes, go and kill yourself, or whatever it might be. In babyhood, it's the ping, pop, it's the bright lights. And actually, babies who are left in front of screens for a long time at this stage, where they're fixed gaze, there's actually a big study in China that shows that that damages your eyesight, causing myopia, which leads to later blindness in some cases. Now, all of these things need further research, but parents need to know that actually a long time spent, particularly in front of a handheld device, which, you know, I've seen hacks that suggest you should tape them onto the handlebars of the baby carrier so that you've got your baby as literally a prisoner in front of
I think your point there is really interesting, because to parents like us, we'll take on that advice, we'll manage it, but it's the parents that are doing that currently, and how this message then breaks through to them.
Absolutely right. And very sadly, 85% of the parents we surveyed were given no advice from a health visitor, a midwife or a GP. So they're getting no information. So they're told, don't give your baby a screen under 2. But parents, we all live in the real world. You know, if you need to get the dinner on the table, then it's very easy to say, well, I'll just do this. And it's totally understandable.
Quick final question before we lose you. Do you get sort of deja vu at the moment with what's going on with the current government, with some of the final days of your own?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Having spent 2 years as Leader of the Commons in a hung Parliament and seeing the, you know, back and forth, absolutely. But I'm very glad to be doing this. You know, this is my real passion.
You're glad you're joining us at the 9 o'clock hour, not at the start of the 7 doing the morning round.
Also true, yeah, the morning round, that was always the real treat for any unsuspecting politician.
Well, Andrea, thanks so much for stopping by. We really appreciate it.
Great to see you.
Really
Thank
interesting
you.
survey this morning. Just as we wrap up, we want to bring you that statement from President Trump on Truth Social once again, because this is, of course, coming out at about 4 a.m. His time after a late night, a dinner with the king, no less. He said Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. No more Mr. Nice Guy. A very sort of aggressive photograph, presumably AI-generated, attached to that. And it's pushing oil prices up again. They were up on the rise anyway in the course of the last couple of days. WTI in the US now comfortably above 100. It's up 3.5% this morning to 103. Brent, the international gauge for oil prices, is up to nearly 115 again. It's up 3%, 114.6. And quite sort of stealthily almost over the last 10 days, oil prices have got back to their worst levels at the war. This is no real pullback anymore.
No, and the impacts for people, you know, trying to get the weekly shop, fill up the tank, And also those summer holidays that are on the horizon, we're seeing having a huge impact.
Yeah, great piece from Paul Kelso on the Sky News website about jet fuel specifically. I think I'd just dwell as we wrap up on the borrowing cost, because yesterday the UK 10-year borrowing cost crossed 5% for the first time in a while. It's rising again today. It's at 5.02% this morning. Well, tomorrow on Mornings, Sophie is on the road with just a week out until the local elections. She's in Tameside all morning. We'll be live from there. Make sure to tune in then, and make sure to stay tuned for Sky News Today, which is next.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.